Can't believe he's done it. The conference room Clash champion, Pat Chowder, being lifted in the air by a cow with human teeth.
Oh my gosh, that's the game.
What a game.
And Zeroskatr is our new champ.
Oh my goodness. He was not expecting to survive that attack.
And that is it. Chad is the winner of Summer of Legends.
All right, and welcome everyone to the second semifinals for the Summer of Legends 2023 tournament. This one is going to be Zeroskatr versus TDCJason, and I will be your host for today. My name is Zach, also known as Darkblade113, and I'm super excited to get started. So, with me today, I have a wonderful cast of commentators, some great friends of mine within the community. Starting out, we've got Chad. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I love playing in these tournaments. I love commentating in these tournaments, and I'm just so excited to see how this match turns out.
Definitely, it's great to have you here, especially since you weren't able to play this time around. So having you part of the finals, it feels like tradition, So glad to have you on board. We also have Ash, of course. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Yep, looking forward to having the dream team here for Unmatched, the power couple, both on commentary here, and should be a great time. And then of course we've got Big Mike or Sidious256. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just glad to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I am the one who, when Chad saw my name in his group, he knew that he was not going to make it out. He was not going to get first. He had to immediately drop. He saw that he knew that it was going to be me. There was no chance. That's why I'm here. Also, I love giving wrong opinions to you at home.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna have a really awesome match here. Both of these players, I'm sure, don't need too much of an introduction. Both of them have been in the tourney scene pretty much since the start. I believe this is actually a rematch from their match that they had during the initial Premier tourney that ran before we started doing any of the Summer of Legends or Winter of Champions annual tournaments. So it's kind of Clash of the Titans here, and it's going to be a really fun thing to see in the semis here. Of course, Zero has been kind of one of the main leading people in terms of content creation for the community, and really getting Unmatched out there and popularizing stuff, like with more people jumping into streaming. In fact, I could say that the whole reason I started my channel and just getting more involved in the tourneys and community in general was because of Zero's streams and videos and stuff on his YouTube channel. So obviously a big pillar to the community. Has 2 trophies already from previous events, so looking to get that 3rd. And then of course we have TDCJason, who's a top level player in pretty much all of the tourneys he's played in. He's made it to the semifinals here before. He actually went against Chad last Summer of Legends in the one that him and I faced off in the grand finals. But he has never made it to that grand final spot, so he's looking to kind of break that streak and finally push through and get there. Of course, one of the 2 people, along with Darren, Cardboard Hustle, in the Discord server, who are also behind the Unmatched Adventures design. So really big part of the community, has helped me out with some of my stuff for my channel too, like emotes and whatnot, hoping to have more of those soon. And yeah, both great players, awesome people, and really looking forward to see just how they play off against each other and take this match in a very interesting direction, I'm sure. So as far as the overall structure of the tourney, this was our second big Summer of Legends tournament, and this one, or no, sorry, this is 3rd one now, right? Yeah, because I started 3, I guess it would have been 3 tourneys ago for the summer ones when I first got into it. And so this is going to be the first one that we've run with a new format that we've dubbed Band Quest. It was actually Mike who came up with the initial idea for it, and we did a lot of tinkering and figuring out exactly how we were going to set it up to make it work, because it's a modified version of Conquest, which worked for some of the older tourneys when the format could support it with less fighters on the roster, but given how things have become, there needed to be some adjustments. So the format itself has a lot of bans prior to picks, and then it also has bans during picks, and we'll go over those once we get the draft results from the players. But it really results in having a better variety of fighters, because you can kind of ban ones out that you either don't want to go against or might be good into your preferred fighters. And it lets you either kind of go for a more generalist approach and have a flexible draft strategy, or go for kind of the fighters that maybe struggle in some formats like Arsenal. For the structure of the tournament itself, we started out with 16 pools of 7 players, so I think that was 112 total players, and then each group had those 7 players, and the top 3 players from each group would advance onto the bracket stage. Previously, we had the top 2 players advance, so adding an extra slot to make it to bracket made it a little bit easier for players to perhaps squeak in those last few points to get in, which I think was a great change. I myself actually made it in that 3rd spot, where I would not have in the previous system. And then after that, anyone who got first in the group automatically advanced to the top 32 bracket and basically had a bye, because for the top 64, there's a preliminary bracket stage for everyone who made 2nd and 3rd place in their group, and then they would face off against someone else from a different group who placed 2nd or 3rd, and then whichever one of them won would go on to that top 32 bracket, and then pair down each round until we got here to the semifinals. So that's kind of the format that we run. I was a big fan of BanQuest, and I really liked Arsenal when we ran that last time, or the last couple tournaments. But I do think BanQuest really lets certain fighters who don't fit into that as well shine. For example, myself love Little Red and playing her, and I couldn't really play her as safely in Arsenal, but I played her with quite a bit of success in BanQuest, so opening up those new strategies and kind of having to adapt to both the older fighters in the meta as well as the new sets that have come out since has been really cool to watch evolve. But in case you are a bit newer to Unmatched, there is a video that we'll play here that kind of gives a basic rundown of the game and what it's all about. And we'll go ahead and cut to that now.
Unmatched is a card-based tactical fighting game featuring various characters from history, literature, and fantasy. The goal? Reduce the opposing hero's health to 0. Players take turns performing any combination of 2 actions, from maneuvering, scheming, or attacking. A maneuver causes the player to draw a card from their deck and lets them move any of their fighters around the board. They may increase the distance of their move by discarding a card known as a boost. When a scheme card is played, simply follow the text on the card to complete the action. For an attack, the turn player will choose a card from their hand to place face down for combat. The opponent will have the option to place one of their cards down as defense. The value on the cards will determine the damage dealt in combat. Melee fighters can only attack adjacent spaces, while ranged fighters can also attack any space within their color-coordinated zone. Some characters have sidekicks to help them out, and others fight solo. Each hero has their own unique abilities and deck of cards to bring the character to life. Because in battle, there are no equals.
All right, and thanks to John, in fact, for narrating that awesome video. It's a really good intro, I find, to people who maybe have a basic understanding of the game or have heard about it, but haven't really delved into it. So that's kind of what the game's all about, and we'll be looking to hopefully see some of that awesome gameplay soon. While we're still waiting for the players to finish their draft, we can perhaps talk a little bit about kind of the players' path to this point in the tournament. I believe both of them made first place in their pool, which meant that they advanced to that top 32 spot and got that essentially first round bye in the preliminary bracket. And then I know that Zero streamed a lot of his bracket matches, so definitely recommend going back and watching those if you haven't seen them, because there were some really good games in there. And then Jason usually doesn't have his stuff streamed as much, but I know based on following the results, he had some really close ones too. And yeah, Chad, I know that you played a lot with John in the past, so what are you kind of expecting from him going into the semifinals here?
Yeah, well, we were big practice partners in the previous tournaments. Still a little bit for this tournament, but however, both of us are getting busier and busier. But I know that he is a big fan of Black Widow, and recently we've done a number of Black Widow test games to just kind of see exactly how viable she is into some of her more questionable matchups. So I would be surprised if John didn't draft her at least. Now whether that's banned or self-banned, we can talk about that after we see that. But I fully expect to see that along with potentially Yanenga. Although I know that Jason is no stranger to John's Yanenga, so I could totally see that being banned as well. However, we do see Jason love Sinbad, probably the foremost Sinbad expert currently, I would say, and that is Yanenga's worst matchup. So if John does get Yanenga, it could be under threat of Sinbad from Jason.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point about Yanenga, I know Jason's quite good with her as well, and pulls her out quite frequently. So I definitely expect her to be somewhere. Now, whether she'll make it past the band stage, regardless of which roster she's on, that's another question, of course. But yeah, I do like the Sinbad call out, because that is a go-to for Jason, and one that he's comfortable with into a lot of different fighters, and would of course love to get the lineup into Yanenga, because that's almost unwinnable for Yen. Like it's possible, I suppose. It's not a 100% win rate on the stats, but it's about as close as you can get when it comes to Unmatched. And so, yeah, we'll see if John can avoid that, because if you can force him into a spot where he has to self-ban his own Yanenga, like, you're probably pretty happy with how things went. Ash, do you have any other like thoughts on what we might be seeing from the players as far as their rosters go?
I think it'll be interesting just because both of these players have been on the scene for so long at this point. Like, a lot of them are, or both of them, I guess, are very comfortable with a lot of the old past people like Beowulf, Sinbad, would fall in there. So it'll be interesting to see, do we fall more toward some of the newer fighters and the Marvel cast, or do they kind of lean back on the OG cast and go that direction? So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see the dynamics of how that plays out, and especially through the band stage with what are each person's comfort picks, and then, does Jason feel as comfortable playing into the new Marvel cast, or, all those kind of things, and see what matchups we end up with. So I think it'll be a good game.
Definitely. And Mike, you did mention about how you love giving those spicy takes. Anything crazy you think we're gonna see here, like out of the blue, that people are not gonna be expecting?
There's one that we might see, and it would be very, very crazy, and I doubt it'll happen, but if there is one, Jason is by far the best Beowulf player on Earth right now. He loves playing Beowulf into Sherlock, for example, because he's a masochist or something. No, I'm just kidding. Because he just enjoys the matchup. Beowulf, he knows ins and outs. He will, and why not at this point? Maybe he has nothing to lose. Some background. Jason and I have been talking for a little bit. We haven't actually been playing, but a lot of theorizing. And I think I know his strategy going into the draft. I would like to see if it paid off or not, but I would likely see a Sinbad, unlikely see a Beowulf, but would like to see a Beowulf.
Yeah, I do think that it would be awesome if he can find that spot for Beowulf to line up, because it's one that, I mean, I do think it'll be probably more likely that if we see Jason make it to the grand finals, where it's best of 5 and you've got that extra slot on the roster, that you see something spicy like Beowulf. But if there's a spot for it, and I know there's a lot of matchups that Jason is comfortable taking Beowulf into that not many people would be. So I do hope we see something real interesting like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see either way. Um, One of the things that I'm kind of interested in is if we'll see more of the Marvel fighters, like Ash was mentioning, from especially the two most recent Marvel sets, King and Country, which had Black Panther, Winter Soldier, and Black Widow, and then Brains and Brawn, which had Doctor Strange, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. If I had to guess, probably not seeing Spider-Man. While he does have a couple of matchups that he can do all right into, including something like Bigfoot, which is not like a slam dunk for him, but is definitely one that he can handle. I find that there's just a little bit too much in the meta that gives him trouble, so probably not as likely to see. But the other two from that set, Doctor Strange and She-Hulk, have been seeing a lot of play. She-Hulk seeing more play, Doctor Strange seeing more bans. But when he does get through, he has a pretty good win rate. So I would not be surprised if those had either been taken care of in the pre-bans, or maybe attract some bans post picks and stuff. So yeah, it looks like, speaking of which, we have picks ready from players. So let's get those up and kind of start talking about what we end up seeing here. All right. So yeah, we did indeed we do see a lot of fighters that we were kind of expecting. In fact, we see Yanenga get through and go unbanned, with in fact Sinbad on Jason's side being banned out by John because he does not want that to happen, especially because you have Red as well, who Sinbad kind of destroys, not quite as badly as Yanenga, but it's not far off. And then we see Houdini and Moon Knight on John's side were the ban and self-ban respectively. And then actually a self-ban from Jason on Medusa, which what do you think of that, Chad?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So we see full scumbag on the right side of the screen here with Daredevil and Winter Soldier. No, just playing. I do think those fighters take a decent amount of skill to play. So just horsing around, but they are very good into Medusa, in my personal opinion. So it is interesting to see the Medusa pick as well, rather than maybe forcing zeroskatr to go ahead and take that. So the self ban on that is a little curious. However, John or zeroskatr12 has played the Yananga Medusa matchup probably more than any other person, so I can totally understand not wanting to take the Medusa side, which is even, but not necessarily the one you don't want to play if you're not necessarily comfortable with. As well as Zach, you love Little Red, and I know that you are comfortable with the Little Red side of that Medusa Little Red matchup. So I know that that's maybe not something that we'd want to see either. So pretty crazy. The self ban on Moon Knight honestly shocks me the most. I think Moon Knight beats both Daredevil and Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier a little easier than Daredevil. So that really does shock me. But it is rougher into Medusa, right? So it's kind of those mind games of what are you gonna do, all those types of things. So ultimately, we do kind of see this lineup. Ashley, what do you think it says for John to be comfortable leaving Yananga up and potentially taking them into Daredevil and Winter Soldier?
It's fascinating. Honestly, I think I'd rather have Jason's side of the draft at this point. I think Daredevil can pretty comfortably beat Yananga and Little Red, barring some crazy combos. Winter Soldier, I think as well. I'm not familiar with that matchup into Red. Maybe Darkblade can speak to that, but I know that both Jason's picks can do well into Yananga, so I understand why he did the self ban on that and felt confident leaving Yananga on the table. It's gonna be fun. I love Daredevil. That's one of my favorite fighters, so I love to see him do well. Shout out to Taylor.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, just touching real quick on the Winter Soldier Little Red. I don't have a ton of experience with it because I still have not been able to play all of the matchups into the newer stuff, but from what I've seen, it is actually pretty favorable for Red. So where you might struggle a little bit on the Yen side, I think Red can do well into both of what Jason's got going on. So I think Jason's plan is probably going to be to try and beat Zero's Yanenga twice, which is no simple feat. So we'll see whether he can take it down. But it does look like we have fighters for the first game. So it's going to be Daredevil on Jason's side versus Yanenga on Zero's side. So, and let me see. It looks like, yeah, it looks like the leader follower was John Zero as leader and Jason as follower. So, Jason will be getting that map pick for the first game here, which definitely matters a lot in a matchup like Daredevil Yen, where if you can dictate the map choice as Daredevil, you start to take away as some of the options for Yen, because her whole thing is going to be to have a very specific strategy to try to beat you, because Daredevil's going to win that long game. Since we have the fighters now, while players do map stuff, let's go ahead and get into deck highlights, and we will start with Yanenga here. And I'm sure that you've played against this fighter a ton, specifically Zero's version of it, Chad, so I'll let you take this one away.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yanenga is dear to my heart, as the first tournament I played was the Release Rumble, in which we did a special tournament with all of the Battle of Legends Volume 2 fighters. So I have played a number of games with her, and here we highlight just a couple of her cards, and especially important cards in this matchup in particular. So we have Rain of Arrows, a 3-value base attack, whose after combat is to go ahead and throw another attack. This is one of the key cards in this matchup, because what you want to do is you want to run Daredevil out of cards and just combo him to death with a number of action gains and double attacks, and forcing him to play a ton of defenses, get those defenses out of there, and then start hitting for raw damage. And so this is the same as saying, hey, you get an extra action to go ahead and attack with another 3-value defense. 3-value offense. So it's a great card in the matchup. Here we actually see Surprise Volley. It's an immediately effect, which is generally rare on an attack card. But it says you may return a defeated archer to a space in the opposing fighter's zone. If you do, the archer is now the attacker. If you do not, you gain 1 action. Now, in a lot of matchups, we go ahead and see this used as a way to increase Yanenga's health pool, because Yanenga's ability is that when she takes damage, she can delegate that damage to her 2 health archer sidekicks in the zone. However, in this matchup, those sidekicks are basically a battery for Daredevil to go ahead and get his cycles off. So you generally don't see this card used to revive archers. You generally see it to go ahead and gain the action. Leading into Action Game, we also have our only other card that gives Action Game, which is a great card, and it is Master of the Hunt. This is an action game that cannot be feinted. So when you go ahead and, let's say, you maneuver to go ahead and kind of attack Daredevil, you then play this to gain 2 actions, spending your last action to do so, and you now have 2 more actions to go ahead and attack Daredevil. If Daredevil ended in your zone, you can start with this, and now you have 3 actions, which is terrifying. Then we see one with the land. Move each of your fighters up to 2 spaces. Each of your fighters recovers 1 health, again highlighting that damage distribution ability, and then draw 1 card. In this matchup, I don't think we'll see that card too often. Generally used for maybe a boost to go ahead and track her down, and then track Daredevil down. And then finally, we have Stallion Charge. 3-value versatile defense. Move Yanenga up to 5 spaces. She may move through opposing fighters, then deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter she moved through. So not only is this extra damage, but it's also the ability to chase the opponent if you happen to use it on offense. If Daredevil, for example, was able to run away with some of the cards that I'm sure we'll highlight later. One other card that I did want to highlight that is key in this matchup is Point Blank. I was wondering if we could get that up here in the display. But general part of the matchup is to basically wait until Daredevil approaches you, as he does have to do at some point, and then when he does, you go off and go ahead and combo him. And Point Blank is excellent for that. So when he does finally come in and approach Yanenga, Yanenga will often defend with Point Blank, which is if the opposing fighter is adjacent to Yanenga, deal 2 damage to that fighter. So it's often a way for Yanenga to just go ahead and get some free damage before she goes ahead and unleashes the combo.
Awesome. So yeah, like you're highlighting, Yen has to use those cards in a way that she might not in other matchups, and the reason for that, of course, is that Daredevil can just keep going. And so if you let him play that long value game, which usually Yanenga is very good at playing, he's going to eventually just exhaust her out. So yeah, let's as a result take a look at Daredevil's deck here and see how it'll function. And obviously one of your favorite fighters, like you mentioned before, Ash, so if you want to take this one away, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't see Devil of Hell's Kitchen up here, which I do feel like is probably going to be the biggest card in this matchup. But probably get a chance to pull that up. Daredevil's a super fun fighter. He actually has significantly less cards than the rest of the cast. But he has the ability to recur cards from his discard pile back into his hand using this key card, Devil of Hell's Kitchen. So normally in a lot of games with fighters that have the ability to cancel his effects, there's a lot of tactical and timing games and when that card gets played, but because Yanenga does not have the ability to cancel his effects, he's guaranteed to get that off, essentially letting him have an infinite deck as long as he wants to play the game. So that's why Yanenga has to kind of go a combo approach on this matchup. So that's Devil of Hell's Kitchen, allows you to recur. Man Without Fear is also a fun card, especially in this matchup, because when you are guaranteed an infinite deck, you can have fun with the boosting. So if you have 3 or less cards in your hand, you can actually double blind boost this card, and that can be a good attack into Yanenga. Or kill an archer if they choose to take that undefended, which is sometimes something that you don't mind losing out of your hand early game. Son of a Boxer is a good card, but maybe a little bit less so into Yanenga, who's going to be attacking from range, but that card will deal 2 damage if you lost the combat and the opposing fighter is adjacent to you. Take a Knee allows Daredevil to heal, so he'll blind boost from the top of his deck, and the boost value of that card show the amount that he is able to heal, and that also lets him have the longevity to kind of play the fatigue game frequently. And through adversity allows him to have a bunch of movement, perhaps take out archers if necessary, but also lets him get out of pins and does 1 damage to every fighter that he moves through, so that gives him some key mobility. Grappling Hook is one I think that got covered up by Devil, but that is going to be an interesting card in this matchup, which allows, or can allow Daredevil to get out of a combo. It says, after combat, move Daredevil up to 2 spaces. So as long as the map is favorable, Daredevil's positioned well, it should allow Jason to move Daredevil out of Yanenga's zone and force one of those action gangs to use a maneuver instead of another attack. So it'll be an interesting game to see how Jason lines up his deck, what he chooses to recur with Devil, which is frequently going to be defensive, so purple and blues, and if he can kind of prune down that deck to have a bunch of defenses and keep his hand count reasonable, tends to be a good match for Daredevil.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the those key highlights, because there are so many intricate interactions in this matchup that both fighters kind of have answers for what the other one's doing. And so just those tiny little things, like whether a grappling hook can get you away, Yanenga can try to position in a spot or catch you with combo when you can't do that, or follow you with skirmish or stallion charge or something. So always a very interesting one, I find. Of course, if Daredevil can stabilize, it kind of just falls flat for Yen if those combo turns go without putting Daredevil within threat of lethal, of stuff like Point Blank, or just big attacks if he isn't careful. But as long as Zero knows how to maneuver the matchup, and I'm sure he's had plenty of practice with this one, it is one that I find can be very tense and close, depending on how those kind of key points go. So now that we've kind of covered the fighters, we do have the map bans. So Daredevil gets map pick here, and as a result, Zero gets to ban 2 maps that Jason cannot pick, and those 2 bans were Hirot, which is notoriously a bad match or a bad map for ranged fighters, and it's probably Yen's worst map overall. Daredevil would be able to not only use the doors, but of course also just use the hard zone cutoffs to negate Yen's main advantage, which is her range, and also would be able to use grappling hook to get away a lot more easily than on some other maps. And in addition, the other ban was Sarpedon, which is definitely a lot bigger of a map than Hirot, but for similar reasons, it's one that Daredevil can take advantage of with the hard zone cutoffs. And in this case, the size of the map lets him run from end to end if he's trying to build up to have defenses to negate Yen's combo turns and survive, and make sure that he can either use stuff like grappling hook or have plenty of defenses so he can keep blocking that flurry of attacks that will come through. What would you be looking at this point, Chad, if you were looking at like picking a map, for example, with those 2 off the board?
Yeah, so it's pretty tricky because those are probably the 2 that I would pick. So showing Zero Skater's excellence and knowledge of the matchup in particular. So a couple things I know that I don't want is anything that really favors range. And so Sherwood is definitely out the door. Yukon can work for Daredevil, but you just don't want to do that. So I would highly recommend against that because you can often hide the archers. So generally what you see here as the Daredevil side is you like maps with so many zone cutoffs that you can easily get away. I don't think we'll see any item maps because they often work against that, even though you can get some buffed defensive values as Daredevil. Yanenga's generally going to be getting those schemes, and you really don't want her to do that. So in that sense, I don't necessarily know. I love Baskerville for how compartmentalized it is, but it is a relatively tight map. So it's bad for ranged, but pretty decent on the mobility side. So just trying to spitball and think of that. You also really want to avoid anything that often gives Jaws makes it a 5. Or even a 6. Like you want to avoid the 2 zone spaces and 3 zone spaces if you can. Marmorial is probably out as well.
Yeah, Marmorial definitely a really good spot for you, and especially the middle of that map. And it does look like we have the map pick in here, so we will head on over to the zoomed in screen there, and it is indeed going to be Baskerville. So yeah, a lot of those upsides that you just mentioned. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about this map and how we might see the secret passages in particular utilized by the fighters in this one?
Yeah. There's wonderful scheme that Daredevil has that when Yanenga's going to try to get away too far, she really can't, right? Because as long as you're on a portal, you're basically close to everywhere if you have that scheme. Is it Through Adversity, I believe, or
Yep.
I don't remember the name off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I'm not great at card names. But the big thing about this map is there's only one tri-zone space. So the way that Yanenga is going to win this is will you down and then hit you basically all in one turn, right? Like we think it's going to be a big combo turn. And if she's going to try to put him on that tri-space to get an offensive Jaws, well, you only got one spot for that. So the chances of that are actually probably very minimal. I do know Jason plays this matchup, I think, twice in this tournament. Once for sure, but I believe he's played it twice. He really enjoys the Daredevil side of this matchup. For those of you who don't know, Jason plays a big value game. So having a map where he can get in close when he wants to, maybe get away when he wants to, it's going to be great. I think adversity is one of the biggest reasons why he chose this map. Also, there is semi-decent zone cutoffs. I think purple is the most underutilized zone on this map. Maybe we'll see that. A lot of people like to hang out in the library, if you will, and also near the blue and the gray. So I'm very interested to see how Daredevil tackles this, but I'm going to be honest. I think Jason's won the mind game of the beginning and has won the draft. I want to see what John can do, and you can never count out John. Always remember that. You can never count out John.
Definitely. All right, and it looks like we are all set up for the players, so let's hop on over into Vorpal and get this show on the road. All right, and here we are. So, of course, with Daredevil getting map, Yen gets position choice, and unsurprisingly does take that first spot. She's going to be able to immediately start drawing into more cards with maneuvers, and potentially even go for an attack on Daredevil with an Archer turn 1 if she wants, by having an Archer go into that top left light blue passageway there through the green one that the Archer's starting next to. So we'll see if Zero has any of the cards to make that profitable. But you basically want to be trying to attack Daredevil every turn if possible as Yen. So keeping the archers on the board at least for a bit to give more coverage is going to be important. The thing about multi-sidekicks on this map is that you can control those passageways very well, especially against a solo fighter like Daredevil. However, the through adversity that you mentioned, Mike, is going to make that not as desirable to group up your archers on the passageways, because Daredevil could play through adversity if he's sitting on a passageway, damage both of your archers for 1 apiece, and then still stay pretty far away from you. So I'm sure that Zero is going to be positioning in a way that makes that more difficult for Jason to accomplish. And as long as he can keep constant pressure up, Daredevil only has 12 defenses in his deck. So being able to eventually run him out of defenses and make that big combo turn pop off and do a bunch of damage, theoretically with undefended attacks, whether that be doubles or action gains, etc. That's kind of what Yen's going to be looking to do here, if possible.
Right now. Right now. Call of the game. It's happening right now. Here comes the double action gain. Here comes all the rain of arrows. He started with it all. He knows that Jason doesn't have a feint or a grappling. It's all going down right now.
We did see a keep from both players, so that is something that I think can give away a lot of information, at least generally, about a hand. Like, I don't think Daredevil would keep if he didn't have, something like a grappling hook or a feint. Maybe he's got like some knees. I think he's got at least a couple good defenses. But Yen keeping could mean that he's got some of those early combo cards, or at least stuff that helps pressure Daredevil. Because while Daredevil's at a higher hand count, he cannot boost his defense, and so he's can only really block for 3s. He does have feints, which are good into pretty much anything Yen can throw except skirmish. That is the one feint punish he has in the deck. But otherwise, feints are generally safe. So if he's got one of those, he might be feeling all right about an early attack from Yen.
Before we reveal it, do you got a bet on what this attack is?
I think this is probably a shift. If I had to guess, I believe this would be a momentous shift. And I think probably the best defense from Jason here would be take a knee, because you want to keep your feints and your healing maybe until a little later. So that's what I would be waiting for. Sorry, yeah, son of a boxer. Okay, so similar theory that it's a 5, but I love the defense there from Jason. What do you think? The fact that they both kept Darkblade, what do you think that means about the quality of each of their hands? And specifically, what is Yanenga looking for, and what is Daredevil looking for in those hands?
Yeah, so like I said, I think you want a good hand that has plenty of attacks for Yen. Like, I mean, most of your versatilles are going to be things you're willing to attack with as well, because Daredevil's not really going to be attacking Yen too often in this one. He's going to be trying to get devils here and there, but he'd probably rather throw those into archers at least early on, especially if he can position in a way where he's not immediately able to be attacked by Yen on her turn. So for example, if he could get down to the solo gray spots below the right archer there, that would be a good spot to set something like that up and make it so Yen can't immediately counterattack without having some of her action gain. But other than that, like I think shifts are a good call because both archers and Yen can use those, so that gives you a lot of freedom with how you pressure Daredevil. Especially because you're going to probably avoid sticking archers too heavily on the passageways. As we see here, they're kind of spread out adjacent to the passageways, so they still have the ability to go through it and have some good coverage, but not opening themselves up to that ping damage from adversity. Um, and then another tool I think that you would like to have as Yen early on is just at least one of the action gains or the double attacks, just so you know that if you draw into, over the course of the first several turns, a couple more of those tools, and use some of your other attacks that you started out with first, and then look to build that combo turn when Daredevil seems like he's in a more vulnerable spot. That's what I'd kind of be looking at from the inside.
Yeah. Now, actually, if you're, do you think if you have the ability to through adversity the archers, it's worth it, or would you prefer to attack them with Devil of Hell's Kitchen?
I think if you're gonna throw adversity early, you're leaving yourself open to a very valuable one with the land play from Yananga. So I think it's a really good opportunity to use to get out of a pin. I think you want to be able to get that damage on Yananga, but it's also incredibly valuable for being able to move through the passageways. Yananga can't block you up. To get into an archer, specifically probably for the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. So I don't think I'd necessarily be looking to try to get everybody hanged by a through adversity immediately, because I think that's just, it can set Yanega up for some valuable healing.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. But Yen usually doesn't get full value off of those one with the lands, just because similar to Little Red, who funnily enough is Zero's other fighter here in the match, usually your opponents are going to go for archers first, like they would Huntsman for Little Red, because if you go after Yanenga, she can distribute the damage with her ability in the ideal way for her, and then once she does so, she can then use that one with the land for up to 3 potential healing. And if you get max value from the healing on one with the land, you're going to be in a pretty great spot. So we do see here Daredevil going in and attacking an archer.
What do you think this is, Mike?
Either the grappling hook to get away out of the zone, or a Devils, or why not the boostable? No, I'm just kidding. It's not the blind boostable. Nobody wants to play that card. You hope that card gets hit by knee. I think it's the grappling or the Devils, but we'll see.
Sounds good.
I was going to say an interesting play here would be the block with a pin the prey, because if it is the grappling hook, your pin the prey is going to resolve first, but you could pull Daredevil adjacent to Yen there, right to the left of her, below where the archer previously was. And with the 2 movement from grappling hook, Daredevil would not be able to get out of the brown zone anymore, and so Yen could immediately attack him first action on her turn if she wanted.
Yeah,
But
I think that, or even a skirmish too, for similar reasons.
yeah,
I think if Zero had either of those, I was expecting kind of the play you were mentioning. That makes a lot of sense to me. So this to highlights that he doesn't have it, or Zero values them being dead and unable to cycle your discard pile off of, rather than yeah, rather than it's interesting, rather than potentially going for the combo now.
yeah.
So if he did have those cards, maybe he doesn't have the combo pieces to kind of pull the trigger yet, which is fair.
Yeah, definitely. We do see the other archer here likely going to make an attack, prevent the overdraw, and of course keep putting pressure on Daredevil's hand if possible. Something like a shift would be solid, so would divide and conquer. There's a 4 currently because the archer is not in Yanenga's zone. Pin the prey is fine, but I don't think it's your best option here.
Mm-hmm. I would love for Jason just to defend this with maybe a healing, and then maneuver and attack the archer with a devil. Feint works as well, but you love seeing those gone as the Yanenga player.
So from the Daredevil side,
Yep.
I think you've set yourself up if you want to maneuver and attack that archer, and if you do have a double, you're going to be getting back both a feint and a grappling hook, which are excellent combo breakers. So that definitely will work to Jason's advantage if he has the double and is able to get that off now.
Yep. And of course, the devil, pretty much you can try to find those times where the discard pile is ideal for it, since Yananga does not have any cancels to stop you. So that is the other reason why she can't really go for the long game, because unlike other fighters who can maybe threaten to run Daredevil out of his recursion if they either get some random discards or he gets unlucky with some of his blind boosts and whatnot, Yananga can't really justify that. So we'll probably see Breather, which lets Daredevil get back any combat card in his discard pile used to get back things like feints and knees, because he doesn't need to rely on them for the devils as much as he might in other matchups.
Wow, I was about to ask about this. So he's coming in, and now he's attacking. Oh,
Double adversity. Okay.
I think that's the right play. I think John was almost goading him into attacking that archer. I think he has the divide and conquer in hand. I think it would leave the archer alive and would probably set up possibly a combo turn or something where Yananga can one maneuver in and then still have all that hand advantage. Getting the archer out of there, now he's got to figure out a way to bring it back. Kind of in a weird spot because now you got a boost. Jason's all about value games and he saw value.
Yep. Yeah, that's another good point, is the way that the archers come back is also one of the tools that Yen needs to do her combos with the action gains, so it puts her in a bit of a difficult spot.
Here we go, possibly.
I think if Jason willingly just put himself down to 3 cards in hand, he must have the pieces he needs to keep himself safe.
I would assume so as well. 2 feints and another grappling hook, because why not?
yeah. Personally, I think I would have loved to have seen a interesting, like a maneuver boost, maybe, to get just to get more cards in your hand, see more cards. You've only seen 14 or 8 cards in your deck. I would have loved to have seen a maneuver last turn, as I think the archers are just so valuable for just cycling and getting 1 or 2 free cycles off. So I really do feel like they add more value to Daredevil than they do to Yananga. So I was kind of surprised by that play last turn.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because especially on a map like this, the archers do give her more map control. But as you're saying, free cycles, not in the same way that you might get free cycles off a huntsman who doesn't have cancels, whereas red does, but more so that you don't put yourself in danger, especially if you take out the archer. You don't end in Yen's zone necessarily, especially if they're split up like they were when that archer was double through adversity. We do see a feint come out for the first surprise volley here.
Interesting to see no blind boost. Do you think there's a thought process behind that? Just to avoid taking any amount of damage, since his deck is definitely a resource.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice because it might just be a situation where if you're already using quite a few of your defenses, you might not want to accidentally, or you might not want to end up, blind boosting away more. And we do see a defense go here with the discard from the healing on Take a Knee, so 2 value boost there, so we'll heal Daredevil back up to 15. No damage from the actual attack since it was a 3 into a 3, but Yen does gain an action here from the surprise volley, so she'll have 1 more action here.
John's using a lot of firepower on this turn.
I know, this is everything. Oh, he had the other one. Ooh, he had the other one.
Undefended surprise volley.
All these keeps. And that's what it had.
Cool.
Yeah, here you go. Oh man, this is the combo turn, right? This is how you win. You got your combo turn. It just happened early instead of later. I think John's thrilled.
Yeah, and you can
He
see
this
that
is
that
it.
grin on his
Yeah,
face. He knows that's exactly what he needed,
he
and
knows what he
at
needed.
the same time,
Yeah.
we see the sigh of frustration from Jason's side because if Yen can catch you without those defenses, it's going to put you in a rough spot. 8 undefended damage there on that turn, and then 1 from the volley that got fainted. So 9 damage to Daredevil. He got 2 healing, but he essentially took a solid 7 there from the turn overall.
Yeah, we did know that that would probably happen by choosing to not draw cards on the previous turn with the double adversity. So it is fascinating to kind of see that happen and play out like this. I'm curious to know the idea here. I would avoid. Okay, he was just maybe threatening, maybe being a little cheeky, maybe aggressive.
See the reaction maybe from your opponent on their cam before deciding whether you want to maneuver or not. But this does let him go up to the top right there if he wants, which is I guess top left would
Top
probably be
left, I
better.
think,
Yeah,
is,
top
is
left is
better.
probably what he's looking at if he's looking for anything like that. But maybe just gonna stay here in the center, not
Interesting.
let Yen take it over, and probably not too worried with only 3 cards in hand though. Yeah, I mean, as long as he's got 8 defense, Yen's probably not going to attack more than once, and he can blind boost if it's something like a shift or a Jaws would only be a 4 here, so not even that threatening.
I would be worried about a double attack.
True. Yeah,
I
that's your main concern.
I really would have loved to have seen go into that top left corner to force a boost
The
out.
light blue, right? What do
Yeah,
you
the light
what do you
blue.
think was the reason for staying there, Chad? Like that's what I want to know because I agree with you. I think the light blue top corner force Yanenga to boost every chance you get at this point.
Yeah, so because you just want her to, you want, because you're a Daredevil, you have a ton of healing, you have great defenses, like you're still totally in this. Uh, so, but you want it to be that resource game that you were highlighting earlier. So, forcing her into that spot seemed to make more sense to me. The only thought process I can think of is if you drew a grappling hook, you want a grappling hook next to Yananga, get a devil off, and then run after that.
Yep. Oh, but we are going to see a potential punish here from the Rain of Arrows.
Man, John's
Does
just
not
loving
have
this.
a defense for the
Oh, he
second
doesn't
half.
have the
This is
defense.
huge. So Jason might get the Devil cycle here, but definitely punished, only having the 1 block.
Can you imagine if John just has the perfect draw and the perfect hand for Yanenga where he has a point blank right here just for funsies? He doesn't care about the 2 damage,
Yeah.
possibly up to 5 damage. Why do you care? You'll be 10-2.
Yeah. Yeah, point blank would be perfect. Stallion's still pretty good. We are indeed going to see the Devil.
I would boost it.
Yeah, if you boost it, you are stopping one of those feints from being recurred,
Oh,
but
you're right.
you might still just
Paint
need
is way
the
more
damage.
important, I think.
Yeah, it's because that stop. I mean, you're at the point though where feint's even a little bit risky with skirmishes in play. Although I guess if you stay at low hand count, that's not as much of a concern. But Daredevil is going to go down to 3 here off of this Stallion.
Mm-hmm.
We're obviously seeing all of John's luck draw coming in today. So he's really going for today's win versus tomorrow's if he were to make it. And Jason is just praying that he can get through this Yanenga battle. I mean, there's still plenty in there, I think.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it is going to be an uphill battle in this one matchup right now.
Yeah, so the Daredevil's whole thing is that he's the man without fear. He's gone through a ton of adversity. With that in mind, and the ability he has to kind of bounce back as long as he can get some of that healing and defense going, what would you be looking at from the Daredevil side right now, Ash, if you were in this spot?
Oh man, I think you gotta get some cards in your hand. You gotta find some healing, and you need some breathers to maybe take back feints. Again, if you are at a lower hand count, a feint is a good defense. Grappling hook is also valuable. It's interesting. I definitely agree with Chad that I don't necessarily understand that double adversity play when he did, putting himself down to 3 cards, especially with John at 7. So that was probably the place where I wasn't following Jason's strategy fully. That's not to say he's out of this game. He certainly isn't. But I agree that it's going to be a fight to get back in. It does somewhat favor Daredevil to play at low hand count like this because he has the ability to blind boost when he has 2 or less cards in hand. So if they keep kind of battling each other at low hand count, it's possible that Jason can get some good damage in, but it also is setting him up for very risky situations.
Ooh.
So it does decide to go for the blind boost and does get the other devil, so that's going to be a 7 value devil, which is going to get 4 damage here into Yanenga. And Daredevil's going to take 1 back.
3.
Yeah. So yeah, that is a really solid hit, and that's one of the benefits you can have as Daredevil when playing at that low hand count. Not only can it help you with your defense, but it can help you a lot with your offense as well. And especially in this case where Yen blocks with a 3 instead of something like a Jaws, which would have been a 5 there. Getting that damage in when she can't soak it onto archers is going to be valuable in the long term. Like, you still got problems immediately that you need some healing and probably to occur some feints like Ash pointed out, but that damage is going to eventually be something that's going to help you at least put pressure on Yen if she's also playing low hand count and is afraid to be too aggressive, just because you might end up going down too much.
Putting some offensive pressure on Yanenga also discourages John from wanting to use things like his skirmish or his Jaws on offense if he feels like he needs to keep them as valuable defensive options.
Yeah, yep, exactly. All right.
I think
that was first action, so we still have another one. Yeah, Chad, go ahead.
I think if I was in Jason's shoes, I would be most concerned with, or my number one priority is getting as much taken knees back as I can, and ideally finding them before John finds his point blanks. So offensive taken knees, I think, is probably the play, because otherwise I believe Zero can kind of sit back, wait for you to come in, and then you've got to basically have 1. You'd be at 1 damage. You'd potentially heal back up to 3, but then you're in combo range. You got those 2 more nasty double attacks, another Stallion charge, another Master of the Hunt. You still got stuff you got to be scared of. So if I were Jason, I would be trying to make sure to find those and attack with them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that other Master of the Hunt really a problem, of course, too, because if you are at this low hand count and Yen can keep up the pressure, that action gain can start to become really problematic, especially with those multiple double attacks, shift, etc. still available. The surprise volley's all gone, which is a little bit of a saving grace. The Master of the Hunt, the only other thing that can gain Yen actions, but those 2 actions might be enough to finish things out if you can't get some of that healing soon. Okay, and we're going to see a breather in place here getting back a feint. But Yen only has 1 card in hand, so it's a situation where if she attacks with it, even if it is something like a skirmish, you can still use ability to blind boost and you won't be taking any damage. So the 1 feint right now is enough to stop pretty much anything Yen can do here, so I would not be surprised to see her definitely maneuver at least once, maybe twice, if she wants to start building up a hand to get another mini combo off to finish off Daredevil's bit of remaining HP.
I definitely understand the desire to have a feint, which does cancel everything in case John top decks another rain of arrows, the double attack. I do feel like increasing that health pool is probably priority number 1. So
Yep.
I would have liked. Oh, sorry, the knee was shuffled. So yes, that.
Oh
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, knee not in discard anymore currently.
Yep, my bad.
That got
Yep.
recurred. Otherwise, that probably would have been what was taken back.
Yep, I agree with that.
Just standing there, menacingly.
Fascinating, because Jason could have chosen to run away, but then he's risking not having a defense in his hand, knowing that his 1 remaining card was a breather.
And
Yep.
he couldn't have gotten far enough away with just 1 maneuver to force a boost from John. So that being scary too.
Yeah. Because even if he draws into something, like, he would basically need to draw into the feint or the knee if he was concerned about another double attack coming out. Because if he doesn't have one of those two defenses and gets attacked at 3 health with the double, he just dies if he can't either cancel or heal some off the first.
Yeah, I think what I'd love to see here is a double maneuver from Jason, just kind of claiming center. Then we'll definitely see a double maneuver from Zero as well. And then I'd love to see Jason, ideally, if he drew defenses, or even if not, I think you gotta kind of go in at this point. I'd love to see him maneuver and boost in so that he's at that hand count that he needs to be at to be able to do things, and also, maybe attack with some such to either get some healing or maybe maybe play a little tricksy, maybe get an offensive feint to hopefully catch like a point blank or a stallion.
Yeah, that could be big for sure. At this point, stopping any amount of auto damage would be amazing for Jason here.
Especially if Jason has the ability to blind boost his feint, he could be getting damage over a valuable defense.
Yes, true.
Yeah, if you can make Yenanga scared for her health pool, that is a good spot. Sorry, Mike, I cut you off.
You're good. I'm just gonna bring in another wrong opinion here, and so you can cut me off as much as you need. I think that John is playing a little. I don't think you want Daredevil to get his hand up right now. I think you wanted to aggress him still, personally. I don't know what's in John's hand, obviously, but why are we letting him get to a point where he might draw into the knees and stabilize, so on and so forth? That's what I'd be worried about as Yananga. But John's the best player that I know. Sorry, Chad. No offense. So, because of that, he must know his win condition, and he's trying to file it through. But I'd be personally worried about seeing too many knees. When really all you need is a leg. No, just kidding. Okay, bad pun, but still.
Yeah, I definitely get the sentiment for sure. I think one of the things that's probably being considered, in addition to maybe just not having the cards to continue being aggressive like he wants, is that that there's a feint face up, essentially in Daredevil's hand, and if he's at 3 cards or less, then he can always basically full block whatever you throw at him. And if you're maneuvering and having to boost into attacking him when he just negates it with that feint. I mean, you're gonna have to do it at some point, but you might want to set it up in a spot where you can either force him to keep boosting his maneuvers for no value other than staying at low hand count, which is still probably a pretty good idea from Jason's side, just so Skirmish can't punish the known feint as badly. But then also, it can mess up his discard pile because he did have a lot of defenses on the front end. Right now we see it all a bunch of schemes. Currently a Devil would get back 4 schemes, which is not ideal for Daredevil because he wants to make sure he has access to defenses. But if those schemes are in the discard, it means that he probably has drawn into at least some now, and of course has the feint that he breathed back. So yeah, I think that's probably the thing. I would guess that Zero's wanting to find at least one, if not both, of the double attacks, and maybe like the Master of the Hunt, to force Daredevil into a bit of a sticky situation yet again. Even if he does have the feint that can full block stuff, he won't be able to stop everything coming in unless he can find some of those knees. But to your credit, the longer it takes for him to go for that play, the more likely those knees are going to be able to stabilize Daredevil at least a bit here.
It looks like Daredevil's trying to keep a low hand count.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, you go right ahead. You were going to say something great.
You either push the advantage, which is a little bit more risky, or you just settle into your advantage and you kind of are happy with that. And I think the way that both John and Jason are more risk averse, more willing to go to the long game, I think you kind of see John's play style coming out and being willing to sit back, himself stabilize. He's got his healing. He's have some card draw, building up his hand again. I don't think he'd rather play the less risky option and just wait out a little bit and make sure that he isn't in a dangerous position when he pushes his advantage.
It is So there are kind of two ways you can play this, in my opinion. If you're in Daredevil's spot, you could just be kind of chilling on the backside and the back end, and just hoping to find those miracle cards, and hoping that Zero is not drawing those. Then when you do finally go in and get those healings, then you're in a great spot. That is one way to play. The other is, hey, you're in a rough spot, so you're gonna kind of hope to even out the health totals a little bit and put Yanenga in a scary spot too. And I think one card that really facilitates that is Man Without Fear. If he had two defenses when he, maneuvered and boosted that overdraw, or sorry, played through adversity, I would have loved to have seen maybe a go in and kind of do the double boost on Man Without Fear, maybe try and get some damage in there and such. It looks like we're seeing that other type of play style, which is definitely valid. But because you need to be at a low hand count in order to survive, I feel you're kind of getting to a scary spot.
Jason does need to keep an eye on his timer as well.
Yep. The unfortunate part right now as well for Daredevil, and we do see those Man Without Fears boosted away to keep at that low hand count on the previous turn, is at this point, if both fighters just keep maneuvering, it's going to result in Yanenga winning, right? Because if Daredevil doesn't cycle, Yen is winning in exhaustion, not just deck count wise, but also health wise by a substantial margin at the moment. And so I think Daredevil is going to be forced to go in at some point, and I think Yen is playing around that, and probably has something like a point blank ready for when Daredevil does decide to go in. However, now that Daredevil is no longer at low hand count and cannot use ability, we might see going in and smacking with a skirmish here. Though if Jason is expecting that, might see a knee block, which is definitely going to be better into a skirmish than a feint.
I think he was
Also
leaving the
possible that
door
just
open for
the
Boxer
option
into
throw
skirmish.
Boxer if Yanenga comes
Yeah,
into the lever.
Boxer would be solid
Yeah.
as well.
I think Boxer
John,
generally hurts you, just because if it is like a momentous shift, or I think that's probably the weakest of the options. Grappling being up there too, so maybe grappling's the weakest, but I think we see, taking it into a shift, if I had to guess.
Yep.
and I
But
think that's
Daredevil
why we were
does
keeping.
just barely survive, of course, so he will get the healing here.
I think that's why we were keeping low hand count too. Is you want the full block of knee over a shift, and then full heal.
Exactly.
So
It's a Boxer, which is the average 2 boost in the deck, so we see Daredevil essentially break even on this trade.
Seeing the last momentous shift go out is actually huge for Jason, though we do see his deck count decreasing. So I do believe he will have to eventually attack with something other than a knee, which is unfortunate. Or sorry, at some point. But I would love to see another knee attack here, as I think that is a great play, in my opinion.
If he's real bold, he could go for one of those feint moves like you were talking about before, though. You might
That's
still
a
need
you
that
play. That's a
on
you play,
defense.
Pat.
The problem is there's still all 3 point blanks, right? So even if you can catch one with a feint, that takes away one of your best tools defensively, and still leaves 2 remaining. Of course, point blank not really one that Yen wants to use on offense, because a grappling hook can get away and basically completely negate its otherwise very strong potential.
Yeah, I do think.
Are going
Yeah.
to see the point blank. And we do see it fainted. Let's go.
Great play. Wow. Wow, big brain. Big brain.
Yeah, it's big for sure.
And one thing I did want to mention, just in my opinion, at this point in Yanega, all you need is that point blank damage, that sweet point blank damage. So I believe that you are going to not ever play that blue defense shield formation from Yanega. I just don't think that makes sense to play that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely would be going for point blanks over shield formation. Shield formation is nice to potentially give Daredevil some problems, hand size wise, because it either force him to get rid of a defense, ideally, but especially if he's attacking with a devil, probably taking a decent amount of damage if he can boost it. And in fact, if Daredevil had 4 cards like he does now and attacked into a shield formation, he would discard immediately, and then it would actually let him do his during combat blind boost, because he would now be at 2 cards where he wouldn't have been without the discard. So you have to be a little careful with it depending on the circumstance, for sure. And we are going to see the maneuver into a boost with a boxer to stay at the low hand count. Getting it in just in the nick of time here.
Anybody else nervous about that clock? Like, anybody else see those other seconds start counting down and just like immediately have a mini heart attack? Like,
Yeah, it does get pretty intense once it gets below a minute, that's for sure. And speaking of minute, we are going to have exactly that much time for all of Jason's future turns. But of course, once you have played with the timer enough, you also learn to, think about your plays and what you're going to do on your opponent's turn. So you can kind of use their thinking time as well for some of your own. Of course, some things are going to change on their turn if they're going in to attack you or based on their positioning. But you can at least kind of see what you've got, what your game plan is going forward, and that can help in a late game scenario like this where you're running low on clock and don't have a ton of time for individual turns. As long as you have that general game plan, you can usually execute plays quicker than you would maybe in the middle of the game where you're still trying to figure out exactly what your goal is.
Yeah. So we did see that excellent feint into a point blank. If I were Jason, I would at some point soon basically try and bet on no more no other point blanks in hand at the moment. I think that's something to try and see if you can capitalize on. You really, the 3 health is pretty scary. If you can get up to 5 health, I see you being in a pretty good position, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we see the going to get out of adjacency, so stuff like Boxer isn't as relevant. No, all the Boxers are gone, but it does not want to let Daredevil first action attack with a Devil into a maneuver away, of course. So unless Daredevil blocks with a grappling hook here, and if it's something like a double attack, he does not want to block with a grappling hook.
I would play a take a knee here if I were Jason. I don't really see any downside other than potential deck size. But then I think you're looking to maneuver and then go ahead and attack. If this is a double attack, you will net some healing, which is a great spot to be in. And then you can ideally get a cycle off, and you're kind of in a good spot, assuming he doesn't have the other Master of the Hunt.
We are going to see a grappling hook. We'll see whether it's the double or not. It is indeed. So now Daredevil needs a block or he just loses, so...
I would take the movement, go with Jason to Yananga, yeah. I think that's a great play.
Yep. A knee here would be really nice, of course.
Interesting. I would go adjacent to Yananga just to leave yourself with off.
Yeah, if you don't have the double though, I suppose you're not going to... Ooh, that definitely is painful. Remember the double grappling hook.
Ooh.
That's all the grappling hooks
are
are
very...
now.
So it looks like for defense we have take a knee, and feint left. Now John took a huge risk there in case he had both knees.
Yeah.
Because both knees would have netted him with a ton of healing, and then he potentially could have, maneuvered, net a defense, net a card, potentially then go in if he wanted with a devil or run away. But yeah, that is fascinating.
Surprised he didn't take in the feint instead of the knee. I mean, the knee instead of the feint.
There are no knees. Oh, there's one.
There's one.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that is surprising to me too. There is one double attack left, I believe. But that's the only thing you're stopping, right? The shifts are gone. Action gains are gone, so skirmish is the only thing you need to worry about, which wouldn't kill you, and you'd probably prefer healing. But maybe he's looking to catch another point blank. Maybe he's looking at being a little fancy there.
Possibly. I think the thing that you're worried about most here is Yen Busen and Master of the Hunt, because you don't have the grappling hooks anymore, so you cannot get away from a double attack, and not just like the actual double attack, because you can feint that like 2 actions of Yen attacking you after doing a Master of the Hunt.
Yep, I agree. I would expect a boost and then a first action attack with a point blank. So you have to throw a defense if you have it, and then an attack with a double attack. If he's got all those cards there, I think that is kind of a foolproof scenario. But I also don't see a problem in just maneuvering and waiting the game out.
Yeah. So we know there's a feint. There's one unknown card in Daredevil's hand, though. I think it was in his hand when he was hit with the double attack, so it's probably not a feint or another knee.
Yeah, which means it's probably not a defense.
Yeah, I would expect it to be maybe the other breather, or perhaps a devil.
He might lose his devils to knee, no? Like that might be an issue, right? So
It's definitely something to keep in mind.
One is a problem, but netting some health is pretty solid.
Yeah. As long as you don't lose both. I mean, even then you have the breather, I suppose, but it does put some strain on your overall plan. We do see a boost in here. See if we see the Master of the Hunt.
yeah, if it's Master of the Hunt, I almost think John probably has every tool he needs, but we'll see.
Looks like just an attack.
Nope, just an attack.
He's going to be feinted, and this is almost certainly going to be boosted. Anything but feint, essentially.
Here's where you don't want to hit a devil.
Is a devil, so full blocks, but that is a devil gone without getting the benefit of the taken knee healing from it, which would be probably worth the trade-off, but just to boost the feint, you'd rather see one of the 2 boosts there, because it would have been enough.
It's so rough because Jason's deck is perfectly stacked for what he might want in getting a devil off, but he just really can't risk it with no cards in hand.
Yeah. This is almost when John with 8 in deck, if Jason doesn't go in and attacks here, you just run away, no?
Yeah.
You definitely do. I think there's a scenario where Daredevil might want to set up for a perfect hand of like 3 solid defenses and attack with an empty deck, Devil of Hell's Kitchen, to hit for an 8 value attack into Yanenga's 12 health. And get 6 damage over a point blank, go down to 1, and then refill your deck and have a bunch of healing in hand. So that to me is kind of your main hope here. You would need to it's tricky. It'd be tricky to pull off, I think.
Jason doesn't have much time to think everything through.
Yeah, and especially in an end game like this, like I definitely advocate for using as much of the time as you can. And we did see Zero use like a full minute, maybe minute and a half of bank on the previous turn, just looking through all of his options, kind of mathing stuff out. And Jason's definitely been doing that as well, but he's still in a rough spot and has to play this exceptionally well to get out of the hole that Daredevil's currently in. And only having a minute each turn is definitely going to put strain on that, even for the best of players. Just a lot of scenarios to think through and not a lot of time to do it. And yeah, at this point I do think that Yen can mostly just stay away. As long as she has a point blank. At this point you're not really worried about Daredevil attacking with a feint into a point blank, because he's only got a couple defenses left. He's got, what, a feint and 2 knees? So if he attacks with a feint, that's taking away one of his 3 defenses, including his safest defense if he's at low hand count. And it also means he's not attacking with Devil, and at this point, if he takes any amount of exhaustion damage. If Yen can force that, it's a disaster for Daredevil.
Here's what I want. I would love to see a maneuver and then maybe a breather back, a grappling hook, and then go into blue in that top corner. The reason you want a grappling hook now versus later is so that you can, and you want it in blue is so that you'd be able to reach. So I think you move to blue, you play breather, you get back a grappling hook. Then on your next turn, you're gonna maneuver, potentially boost. Oh,
We're gonna boost with the breather.
Just going with the
I see.
breathers.
So this is gonna be an 8 value devil, I believe.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So this is a fine play as well. Grappling hook would be a defensive play if he comes in, attacks with double attack, stuff like that. This also is basically the same idea is what I was hoping. You're hoping John doesn't have the combo pieces, which I think a risk like this was needed to be taken at some point. So
Yeah, definitely. Yep, we
question
do
is,
see
do
the...
you boost to reveal what's in your hand or not to the opposing fighter?
That's a good question.
We saw actually in the last tournament, Little Expressionless Animal chose not to boost against T-Rex and not reveal that the top card of the deck, the one card left in deck, was a feint, which and then the opposing player actually made the wrong call later, and so that we see some expert play there. If you want to reveal, you have a knee, and feint. So whichever you reveal there shows what your other two cards are. So
Yeah.
I might not boost it. It depends on what it is.
To get
Yeah,
6
that's a
damage
good point. It is a lot of damage. It is
it's-
half of Yen's remaining
and
HP.
3 defenses, you're guaranteed to have a knee in hand.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I might do it, but I tend to be a little bit riskier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess
All about
is
the
there
health differential.
because Zero knows that Jason has at least one knee. Is there value in knowing whether he has a feint or not? Because I mean, sure you've got the skirmish, but if he's at low hand count, it's not really like that same mind game, right?
Correct.
Because if Daredevil had more cards in hand, then well, I guess if he goes down to 1, which he will here, a skirmish would be lethal over either knee or feint. Okay, and the last card was feint, so there are 2 knees in hand.
Yep.
So the boost value on the feint will not matter there, since Devil will be able to override it and just be an 8.
Yeah, I think I agree with y'all. I think if it would change how my opponent plays, then the answer I think might have been yes. But if it wouldn't, then I think you're fine doing this. I think the big problem that I see, in my opinion, is if he's got a double attack. First action attack with the double attack is great. Clean out both your defenses, and then kind of go from there. And I think that's kind of a scary spot to be in if he does have the double attack.
Yeah, also the bit of a scary thing that we see now for Jason's side is the fact that the scenario now is 2 of the cards are boost 1, 2 of the cards are boost 3, and there's a boost 2 in there. And so if knees hit things like feints instead of the devil, your health potentially is in a really bad spot. So if it averages out and you hit 1 of each, then you're looking in an okay spot still, depending on whether that double attack comes through or not, like you're mentioning. But yeah, if you hit like double feint off of the knees, that's gonna maybe just beat the game, but we'll see. It'll be a great time for a Master of the Hunt for Yen as well, because again, still no way to get out of the zone with grappling hooks since none got shuffled back. And even if they had, they'd still be in deck at this point.
There's 1 double attack left, is that correct?
Yes.
So we have 1 double attack, 2 stallions.
Divide,
And
a
Master.
Jaws.
Master
Yep,
the
and
Hunt,
then
and the Prey, Skirmish.
And then the 2 defenses that bring archers back. I almost thought we were going to see that right there, just so that Jason would have to decide whether I want the damage or if I want. But it does put him down to 1 health for the point blank.
Oh, you absolutely let an archer come back because that's someone you can attack without having to worry about.
Point blank.
Well,
yeah.
what I meant was I think John just takes it away immediately for the 2 extra, so it's like a 5 value defense instead of a.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think you wouldn't boost if you were Jason in that spot. Because I mean, maybe I see the merit. I think I always see archers with dollar signs in this matchup of hey, there's free cards that I get to get back. So anytime I'm able to bring one back, I'm ecstatic.
And we'll see John with very little time left as well, so both of them playing
Ooh.
the game.
The office. So if it hits a feint, this is the game.
Ooh, hitting a devil would be huge.
Yes. This is Sven. Oh, and that's it.
Oh wow!
That's unfortunate because I really wanted to see how Yen would
Want-
close this
yeah,
out
yeah.
if it was the Devils.
Wanted to see how it played out.
That you win? Yeah. Or no? So here's the thing. This was my hand, right? So I'll walk you through my thought process here. I took like a whole minute on that last decision because what I could have done, I decided to play the odds, and I got lucky. Obviously, 2 out of 5 is like okay, 40%,
Sure.
whatever, it's fine. But
Because if that hits
it's
devil
not likely,
here,
you know.
if that hits devil
Huge.
here, which is
Because
also
then-
2 out of 5, then like Steed no longer
Yeah.
kills me, and then I think I
Yeah.
don't know that you can win. Yeah.
Yeah. So my other thought, I played the let's try to hit the 40%. And even if it's not the 40%, right? If it's the breather, I'm okay because it's a
Sure.
wash, and then we
Yeah, it's
go from there. Right. So it was
It's
like
a-
2 out of 5 really good.
It's a wash, except
And it
I
was
get to
2 out of
play.
5 win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you got it. So, right, so I decided to go for that. But my other option I was thinking of was skirmish because then I force a blind boost, which is really good for me because if you don't blind boost, you just die straight up in the combat before you heal.
Yep. I have
So
to
it
come
forces
after
you to
man.
blind boost. Yep, and that makes 2 cards lost. And then you're down to only 3 cards in deck. You may have lost both your devils for all I know, but you have a breather in that case. So you're not getting cut off completely.
Yep.
But it does like ditch 2 cards out of your deck and it forces the initiative back on you, and I still have a lot of good stuff, and then I still have this on defense, right? But then you have feints to attack with, but you can't really afford that because like those are your only defenses. Also, if I force a blind boost here, that's 2 cards out of the deck, and then I can throw the double because I knew you had 2 knees in your hand because of what you shuffled back. Those
It's
the
2
only
cards out of
remaining
the
cards.
deck, but it's not only 2 cards out of the deck. My health may be high enough that like lots of other routes I'm safe from. That's the like the
Mhm.
super risky part here is that if in all
Yeah.
cases if you attack and it's a 3, then like it's like I'm in a really good spot.
Yeah, exactly. The heal, I mean, it was like 2 feints, 2 devils, like 2 highs and 2 lows. I mean, it
Yep.
was scary for sure, but like that's how this matchup always goes.
And I get to at least put
Um,
pressure on that like you can never do the point blank or you have to decide if it's my final one whether or not to point blank to kill me over a devil, since a devil's now in lethal range. Yeah. So it makes it super interesting.
Yeah, because you were smart putting me down to 6 because now devil last attack wins over the point blank.
It
So
was so frustrating
really
to me
well played.
knowing that my final card is faint and knowing that it reveals exactly what my hand is. That was the
Yep.
only reason I almost didn't. But I'm like, well,
Yep.
you have to like, I'm gonna make you, go or get off the pot right now. Yeah.
Mhm. Now,
Well
if
played.
I had the master of the hunt, I could have had lethal there regardless, right?
All right, and yeah, wow, what a finish to that game. It really came down to the wire, despite that really good combo turn from Yanenga. I think a great job from Jason, kind of navigating from there and trying to find the outs that Daredevil still had between the healing and just barely staying alive, playing very well around the point blanks, and then also getting some really good damage in with a couple of devils, eventually putting Yen in a spot where she might be at risk of just taking too much damage if Daredevil gets some of that healing back. And yeah, that really did come down to a coin flip there near the end with the whether you hit the 1 boost or the 3 boost. Even if Daredevil had hit the 2 boost, like I still think he's in an okay spot, though I think that would have been a lot rougher, because then the double attack starts to become a problem if you hit the um, feint on the boost for that one. So yeah, crazy game. Really fun to watch. This one was fortunately one of the Daredevil Yanenga games that comes down to the wire and has a lot of those really cool interactions instead of, Yen's combo turn kind of flopping and then Daredevil just eventually winning in exhaustion because she can't do any damage anymore. So yeah, very well played by both players and a very entertaining game one for this set for sure. What do you think at this point, Chad, that Jason has to do to kind of bounce back from this one and try to secure things against Little Red?
Yeah, well, obviously this was not the intention. I think Daredevil and Winter Soldier are generally pretty good into Yen, and so the goal was to counter her twice. But losing game one here will not necessarily lead into that. I have played a number of Daredevil games versus Zero's Little Red specifically, and they've always come down to the wire, always been very close games. So I think we'll probably see maybe another one of those be close at some point. However, I think the Winter Soldier Little Red one, as you highlighted earlier, is fairly good for Little Red. I know that I might be in the minority, at least what I've seen in the Discord spoken, but if Huntsman can just provide a little bit of value, then every combat becomes terrifying for Winter Soldier, with Little Red just having so many damage options available to her. So if I were Jason, I would probably expect to see the Winter Soldier first here to get either map or position. Um, I think you probably want position, just to kind of get that hand up first, and maybe try and get some sixes off on Huntsman before that happens. However, I could see an argument for choosing like an item map, for example, maybe with some healing or something like that. But then again, you give healing to maybe the Huntsman, which is a pretty bad idea. I can see it go a number of different ways. If we see like a item token, we might see like the Raft, which has pretty bland tokens, trying to kind of do some fun stuff there. But I do expect to see the Winter Soldier first here.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. The thing that you really want to do in the best of three variation of Band Quest here is play to win the match, of course. And this was something that Zero himself mentioned in the first semifinal. Is you always want to go with the matchup that is usually want to go with the matchup that's more difficult because you get that choice of advantage, and that's going to give you the best chance to claw back that difference in a rough matchup for a fighter. Because it doesn't, like, losing 2-0 or 2-1 doesn't make a difference at the end of the day. But if you do manage to win with that rough matchup, then you can set yourself up to take the more even matchup, or maybe even the favored matchup, depending on what you have left, when you don't need the choice of advantage as much. And that's it's playing to win the set instead of just get an extra game, because at the end of the day, that extra game doesn't matter if you can't win the whole match. Like, you're only advancing if you can win both from here on out. What do you think, Mike, about a choice between something like an item map versus position choice?
I'm going to say something, and I know I'm in the minority. The Helicarrier is turning out to be my favorite item map, and I truly mean that. And against Red, you can use the 2 discards as Winter Soldier against Red and really ruin her day. Because you don't care about your discards.
Yeah.
You're going to get those back eventually. That's not a problem. But forcing her to be in a rough spot because she likes almost all of her cards, they're all very useful, and the symbols have to line up. So I think a Helicarrier will be sneaky. Also, there's a lot of parts of that map that you can corral as Red, but you probably don't necessarily care about that as much as Winter Soldier because you can fight your way through Huntsman. Or if the symbols don't match, you'll always guarantee your healing, right? Because the 3 will go over the 2 for the Huntsman if the Wolfsbane's on top. I really think Helicarrier is very, very underrated, and I think that it would almost be a perfect map for here. And plus, I bet John doesn't play on it much. You gotta exploit every little bit you can. So that's just my personal opinion. If you're going items, otherwise throw them on the Yukon. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, the the one thing I will note, which is interesting, about taking position, um, against red is that oftentimes she doesn't actually mind going second, because it means that your opponent can't force you to waste the wild in your basket, because red starts with that when her discard pile is empty. It acts as if she has a wild on the top of her discard pile, which means any of her effects are active on her cards. And so what you often try to do against red, if she's going first, is you maneuver. She double maneuvers the first turn, because most of the time she's not going to be able to reach you, at least not without boosting or playing one of her schemes, and then that kind of messes up the wild anyway. So mission accomplished in theory, if she has to do that. And if she just maneuvers up to 7 cards, and then you go and you maneuver up to 7 and get as far away as possible, she's probably going to have to boost or play one of the Into the Woods to reach you, and that will again waste that wild symbol. Whereas if you go first against red and you double maneuver to 7, and then she double maneuvers to 7, well, now the initiative's on you as the player playing against red, and you either have to overdraw and waste some of your cards, or you have to engage and give her that wild symbol on defense, which is good for both her and Huntsman, of course. Um, so red not actually too bothered going second. And honestly, if she gets map choice and gets to go second, I actually think I would be very worried about doing that if I were in the Winter Soldier position. So I might lean a little bit more towards map and try to go for one of those items ones. I do like the call out on Helicarrier, because I think that it doesn't have some of the downsides like Hell's Kitchen or Navy Pier of getting those healing items to the Huntsman potentially. Because if red gets position, which she would if you're taking map, she gets to position herself in the way that lets her control those healing items from the get-go. And she could even just plant Huntsman on one of them. And so if you go in to attack him, you're not going to one-shot Huntsman even as Winter Soldier, and then he could immediately use the healing and back off. And if you give Huntsman more than the already beefy 9 health that he has, like, it's just not going to be a good time, even with 6s from Winter Soldier. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see kind of what each of the players' thought processes is in that regard, and whether we'll see that map or position choice from Jason, assuming that we even see the Winter Soldier first. But I do think that we probably have to if Jason wants to try and take the match overall. As far as the other one, if you can get past Redwood Winter Soldier, what are your thoughts, Ash, on the Daredevil matchup for Red?
Well, I've never played against John's red, so Chad's got the one up on me on that one. I tend to like it as Daredevil. Red only has 2 cancels. You're guaranteed to be able to get off your cycles on the Huntsman in the same way that he doesn't have any cancels like Yananga. So you don't really mind his health too much. You're okay to kind of wait around, but red having map choice definitely does lend to her being able to protect the Huntsman in corridors or things like that. So I think it would certainly be a close matchup. I like the Daredevil side of it. That's probably what I would choose to play, but definitely would be tight.
Yeah, that's fair. It's one of the few matchups that Huntsman can actually become a bit of a liability. Because he doesn't have those cancels, those devils go into him, and while he does have Once Upon a Time to potentially get some reflect damage back, he doesn't have the better one in Mouth, which is what you ideally line up into Devil to get 4 damage back into Daredevil. And so if he can go for Huntsman, even if you don't block Huntsman, he can survive 2 devils if he doesn't take any damage from any other source. And so you can theoretically get 3 cycles off of him even if red doesn't block him at all. and that's going to lead to potential issues. Though, of course, Huntsman's main counterplay to that is to just smack Daredevil really hard when he does go into cycle on him, because if you have those long have I sought yous that are 6s when adjacent to the opposing fighter, even if Daredevil feints those, he's still taking 2, and if he blocks with anything else, he's taking 3. And that's just a really good spot to be in. And honestly, you don't even mind if he plays something like Boxer, because you kind of want Huntsman to die earlier rather than later in the matchup. Like, you still want to get some good value out of him, but Daredevil's not just going to be throwing any old attack into him. So even if he takes a Boxer, Daredevil only gets 2 cycles off of the Huntsman in that case, if you just don't block him, which you might decide not to, just to deny that extra value to Daredevil in the long game. Because if you can force him to a spot where he has to attack red with Devil, then you can start to really get some good reflection damage off, similar to how Beowulf in the matchup wants to line up those Grendels into the Devil of Hell's Kitchen.
I wear it as a badge of honor that in my first tournament ever, I defeated Jason's Beowulf with my Daredevil, and that was really
That's awesome. That's a
Something to
matchup
be
that I
proud
actually
of.
do like that one quite a bit as well. It's interesting because Daredevil, in fact, Winter Soldier is similar in this regard for me, at least, in that I don't particularly care for either of them, like playing as them. They rank pretty low for me out of the entire roster and who I would prefer to play if I had the choice. But I really do have gained an appreciation for playing against Daredevil. I do actually find a lot of matchups pretty fun. There are definitely some that can be a bit of a slog or annoying if he can stabilize, but there's a lot of matchups where they're very close, similar to that Yanenga one there. And the red matchup is one of those that I have had a lot of fun with in the past. And so I think that it was actually the grand finals last year against you, Chad, that my opinion kind of started to change, because we had that really crazy InGen versus Daredevil game where I just went full aggro as InGen, which is not usually how you play that fighter, but he can be played that way when necessary. And from there on, I started playing more against Daredevil, just because he was pretty meta relevant, but also because I really liked that game, and so I gave him more of a chance instead of just being annoyed with him like I was when he first released, because he can be annoying at times, especially for red, because one of the things that Daredevil can do, of course, is breather back feints. So in matchups like red, especially since she only has 2 cancels and you get guaranteed cycles on Huntsman, he can be a little bit more loose with his devils, like not always having to breather them back, because he's not as worried about running out of the recursion like he would be against a fighter with 3 full feints and the ability to feint with both the hero and the sidekick. And red does not like fighters who can feint her more than 3 times in general, and so that can be an issue. But I've found that red has a lot of tools in the matchup, as we've kind of gone over, and so I do think that it's not a terrible one in the long haul. All right, so it looks like we do have fighters, and interestingly enough, we are actually going to see Daredevil versus Little Red to start us out for Game 2. So perhaps Jason seeing something that we don't, and deciding that it's better to have that advantage choice on Daredevil instead. So we've been talking about it a little bit here, but let's get into the deck highlights and go over Daredevil, who we just saw, but there are definitely different interactions in this matchup than the Yanenga one. So, Chad, if you want to take this one, since you were talking a bit about playing this one with Zero before and kind of knowing how he plays the Little Red side of this.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I'd love to highlight about this is, as I mentioned, the Huntsman is kind of a battery. So you really want to get as many cycles off of Huntsman as you can. And Son of a Boxer actually kind of works against that. So if you are worried about taking too much damage from the Huntsman, then Son of a Boxer can definitely help you kill the Huntsman a little quicker. But oftentimes I'm looking to maybe keep him as long as you had highlighted earlier, Zach, for as many cycles as possible. Now we see Take a Knee still doing just just really good things for Daredevil in general. It's a great way to get some healing, and it's a great way to actually stay alive. We saw Jason do excellent in that last game to actually keep the game going, even though he got down to 4 health extremely early in the game. And so take a knee is a key card, as it always is. We do see Daredevil. Previously, he had 3 feints. And feints were really solid, of course, and they are. I do see the offensive feint in this matchup often as well, to maybe try and catch that really scary auto damage card from either Huntsman or Red, or also that, I think, Mouth, as you had mentioned earlier, trying to catch that instead of Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Now, in this matchup, you generally don't see Daredevil float at low hand count nearly as often. That's often because Red isn't smacking too hard to need that ability, as well as random discards from your hand can really hurt as Daredevil. So you're looking to keep more options in your hand at a time. We see Devil of Hell's Kitchen, of course, always just the star of the show. And then I appreciate Breather being brung up here. We often see Breather either cycle feint or take a knee quite a bit. Feint does a ton of work in this matchup, either offensively or defensively. So I do expect those to be used quite often, almost exclusively for defenses.
Yeah, great call out. And again, the ability to use feint offensively to stop that that extra damage is definitely going to be something Daredevil's considering, particularly because of the note about Breathers not being able to, or not having to be committed as hard to Devils. And of course, in addition to the offensive feint into things like Mouth, you also have the Man Without Fear that can be used essentially as a bait attack. When Red thinks you might be going for Devil and throws one of her 2 mouths, you only take 2 instead of 4, which is a lot better for you in the long run. So yeah, that's gonna cover Daredevil in this one, and so then we'll hop over to Red here. And probably a surprise to no one, I'll go ahead and take this one this time.
What?
I might know a thing about Red. I've played her once or twice. But no, I do love just her whole style of play. You'll see that she has these symbols below the banner, noting which character can play the card, and she has 3 different types of symbols. She has Pelt, Knives, and Wolfsbane, and then she has a wild symbol that's kind of like a mix of all 3. And basically, most of the cards in her deck have effects, and if she has a symbol on the top of her discard pile that matches that effect, she gets the extra bonus. And so your whole thing with Red is kind of playing a mini game to line up your symbols and get full value out of your cards, because if you get the value from most of your symbols, her deck is solidly above average. Whereas if you can't line up those symbols, a lot of her cards end up being like blank 2s and stuff, which does not feel good. So definitely a fun little side thing that you're doing, and your opponent has to play around as well. And because of that, you can kind of play some mind games with her and attack with things that your opponent might not be expecting, because a lot of people think, oh, well, Red's predictable since you know what symbol effect she has active on her discard pile, but you can kind of do some tricky things to avoid that. In this matchup in particular, stuff like Stones in the Belly can potentially put some threat on Daredevil's Devil of Hell Kitchens, because either hitting those or Breathers a couple times could stop Daredevil from being able to safely use the Breathers to recur feints, because he'll have to be more worried about running out of recursion. It is random discards, so as long as he doesn't put himself in a terrible spot, it won't be too bad. And then, of course, the What's in My Basket we see as a versatile 4. Probably the strongest, it's definitely the strongest, just pure value block in Red's deck. And it also sets up a wild, so you can follow it up either by blocking with it and then having something you want on offense, or attacking with it and setting up a good defensive symbol, since your opponent won't know what you're going to be using because you have all of your options. It's also quite nice because Huntsman's only way to block for more than 2 is Stones in the Belly, though, as we were talking about, since he is more of a liability, that might not matter as much. The cancel that red does have is eyes here, what big eyes you have, and it is a 3-value versatile that always cancels. And if you have Wolfsbane, it ignores the value of your opponent's card, so this can be both good on offense and defense. And this matchup probably going to be a bit better on offense, because if Daredevil plays anything other than a feint into it, you're going to be dealing 3 damage to him, and you're going to be stopping all of his effects like Boxer or Knee, which is probably the biggest one to stop that healing that he might be wanting to get otherwise. Hands is just a nice attack that you can keep putting pressure on him. He's either taking the attack and taking 2 damage, or he's blocking with a defense card and you can maybe try to run him out. It can also get back something that has Wolfsbane on it, so something like Stones in the Belly, or another card that we could throw up here, Once Upon a Time, which does 3 damage if you have a Knives on the top of the basket, so getting those back can be very nice. And then the other card that I'd like to point out, maybe put it in the place of hands here, is that Long Have I Sought You for the Huntsman. It's the main way that Huntsman is going to be able to punish Daredevil for going in for those free Devil Cycles on him. It's a 4-value attack that it becomes a 6 if you're adjacent. So if Daredevil does anything but feint it, he's going to be taking a good chunk of damage unless he's playing at low hand count. But playing at low hand count against red can put you in a bit of trouble against things like stones and what have you. So definitely a very interesting fighter, very tricky fighter, and I do love this matchup, so excited to see how they both handle it. It looks like we do have map bans, so the maps that were banned are going to be, sorry, one second here. Sarpedon and Yukon are going to be the band. So, as much as Zero talks about liking Yukon as a map, probably not one that you want to let Daredevil have here, because it is large, and especially if Huntsman does eventually go down, Daredevil can basically just avoid red. She does have a couple ways around it. She can play into the woods to catch up after a maneuver and then boost the maneuver potentially, but she can only do that a couple times, and Daredevil's going to be able to run around that map and be annoying, so definitely makes sense to get it out of the way. And then Sarpedon, similar thing as with the Yananga one, it's just a large map. Chasing down Daredevil is going to be difficult, and that's something that you're going to want to be able to have the option to do, and not let him play his long game, essentially. And we do also have the map pick here, so we'll get the screen pulled up for that. It is going to be Raptor Paddock. And this is a very interesting one. Mike, what do you think of this pick?
I think you're going to be 4 away from everywhere as Daredevil. You can't hide from me. Sorry. But also the same match, you're going to be 4 away from Little Red. You can't hide from me. Sorry. Very tight map, as we all know. I'm assuming that this is going to be a little bit favored one way or another in the end of it, but it's going to be whoever's cards are going to be more valuable at the time, I'm sure. But I like it. Also, for those who don't know, it's semi easier to get off your 2 damage scheme on this map than a lot of maps, unless you're trying to hang out in that little white zone on top or the little yellow in the bottom. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm happy that we're going to see some possible another great gameplay. I mean, we're at the highest of the highest at the top 4 here as far as gameplay and competitiveness goes. So hopefully just another fun one.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of which, let's hop over to Vorpal here and get going. All right, and yeah, one of the interesting things that I wanted to follow up on that you touched on there, Mike, was that the white zone in the top left and the yellowish zone in the bottom right, those are 2 zones that are going to not only make it a little bit more difficult for red to path when she wants to do so, because they do have those, for the most part, hard cutoffs, but also Daredevil with a double maneuver turn can go from one end to the other if you're not blocking him off. Huntsman might be able to help in that regard a bit, but unless you hard pin him, he's probably going to have a way through, and even then adversity can probably get him there as well. And if he just keeps going back and forth between those two spots, it's going to be a bit annoying without ideal positioning from Red's side. So I definitely do generally like this map for Daredevil, especially against someone like Red who doesn't have necessarily the tools to immediately punish you or chase you down. Someone like Achilles, for example, who really likes this map. It might be a little bit too tight still for Daredevil, but Red doesn't love boosting her movement in the first place. And if you stay 4 away, it doesn't even let her get to you with a first action into the woods. But as long as Huntsman's on the board, she will be able to use his body to make things a little bit more difficult from the Daredevil side, which is a bit annoying, of course, for Jason because you want to keep Huntsman around to get free cycles, but at the same time, if you do so, then that extra positioning power, having the sidekick, is going to cause you a headache in the long run. So very interested to see how that positioning will factor in, and I think the positioning for both players, as normal, but even more so in a matchup like this, on a map like this, is going to kind of decide things, I think. All right, and we're gonna do a quick hop back to the commentary screen here, just getting a refresh on Vorpal to make sure deck trackers are working properly. But yeah, I gotta say, I was not expecting to see Yen in the first place, so that was a treat to get to see. And now we're also getting to see Little Red, two of my favorite fighters in general. The matchup between the two of them is incredible, and one that is a lot of fun in its own right. But just them being involved in general is going to be a good time. So definitely looking forward to this one, and we'll see how Zero starts out here. Maneuvering first, but deciding maybe if he wants to boost or just maneuver again.
I do think it's interesting. Saw Daredevil choose map, and then Red getting to choose position chose to go first. So Zach, in what you were saying, it's possible for Daredevil to force boost and thus voiding the wild card in the basket.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that comes into effect.
Yeah, and it was probably a thing where Zero was considering boosting in this turn just to, if he's gonna waste the wild anyway, might as well start aggressing Daredevil as quickly as possible. We did see a mulligan from Red, and I think we saw a keep from Daredevil, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And so it does mean that Red didn't quite have the tools she was looking for at the start. Typically, you're going to want something like stones, and while you might still want it, it's not as crucial because, again, you're not really worried about Daredevil focusing down Huntsman immediately. He's going to try to get more long-term value out of your sidekick. So you're probably looking for some of those tools to put pressure onto Daredevil as Red, or even better, just having some of the long have I sought use for Huntsman to follow up on those turns where Daredevil does go into cycle on him.
Now, I know it was highlighted that, forcing Red to lose that wild, but you see John do something that he likes to do on a couple of these maps and find the perfect positions to cause that not to happen. So if you actually look here, I believe every single space on the board is covered by one of your fighters with a single maneuver. So Red is not actually forced to lose her symbol right off the bat. Because you are actually able to capitalize regardless.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was looking at the positioning as Jason started his turn and was going to note that very thing. In particular, if you go over, the only place that you can actually be away from Red in this spot is a couple spots over here on the left side of the map. Of course, you could also end adjacent to Huntsman, but that seems like a bad idea. And so, yeah, we're going to see Jason go over here to the left, so he will be outside of a single maneuver of Red. Red could still do an Into the Woods, but of course that would waste the symbol. And if you're going to give one of the fighters a symbol here, it's actually better to give it to Huntsman because he doesn't have as many things that he wants to take advantage of on offense with the symbols. Of course, he can use things like stones, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see something like that here, or maybe Once Upon a Time. But if Daredevil kept, not too unlikely they might have an early feint, because if you can get those early feints going and then get them back with breathers, that is going to help you mitigate a lot of the stuff from Red. So we might just see a Long Have I Sought You here, because that's going to be good damage regardless. We might also see Zero go for one of those effects if he wants to risk it into a feint. Ooh. And this is actually
Right.
probably best case scenario into Long Have I Sought You, because again, the boxer's bad. The feint is fine, but not as good as into other stuff. And on average here, the taken knee is going to be a 5 value block, because on average you're hitting a 2 boost for Daredevil's deck. And then you're only taking 1 effectively from Long Have I Sought You. And that is indeed what we see here, with a Through Adversity on the boost, and actually probably one of the best boost cards. You don't want to through adversity Huntsman, because again, 2 undefended devils will take him out then, instead of getting a 3rd cycle off of him. And then you don't really want to be using through adversity to ping red, because eventually a Huntsman is just going to be able to heal her up with the scheme before he goes down. So yeah, I think probably ideal there. It's not a combat card. It's importantly not one of your blocks or your breathers, and so yeah, pretty ideal there for Daredevil to start out here.
Absolutely. And if I was Daredevil, I would not attack Huntsman yet, because it's really not great devil value yet, unless you're hoping to hit into a stones, for example, where you get that extra card, but that requires the opponent to kind of play into your hands. Rather than the other way around. So I'd love to see maybe a maneuver and maybe just a breather for another take a knee, so that you can play that again, and then you'd be at perfect spot to go ahead and get an early Devil of Hell's Kitchen. So rather than potentially the overdraw from Daredevil, which is also fine, but maybe seeing a fancy breather play would be cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I also would be interested to see the what the breathers can maybe do with stuff like knee, if you can get like, because the ideal would be to breather back knee, play more knees or feints, and then shuffle those all back in. And especially since we've already seen one Long Have I Sought You from Huntsman, and it only did a single point of damage, you're not as worried from the Daredevil side of his immediate damage output. Though of course, with things like stones, you still have to be careful in case you have some of those 3 boosts in hand. Another card that Red could try to leverage in this matchup is the Wolfskin, which is if she has Pelt in the basket, it's a 2 value block, and then she draws 2 cards if she gets that effect. And so it can let her keep pressure up against a lot of fighters. And because she has a lot of ways to keep attacking with stuff like hands, the draw 2, as long as she doesn't, you usually don't want to do it with all 3 copies of Wolfskin, because that's probably too much, except against fighters that draw just as much. But against Daredevil here, if you want to keep pressure on him, I think the ideal is maybe to try and get him to some fewer cards with attacks and pressure, and then maybe try to draw up a bit with Wolfskin. Though in the current situation, not really an ideal block, since you'd be at a bit too many cards at this point.
I think
do you have any winning lotto numbers while you're predicting future plays, like out of the blue, like you did, and just worked out
sometimes I get
amazingly?
next time I fall into one of those trances, I'll call you up.
Thanks, dude. Thanks.
So it's interesting. Zach, as the little red expert, I think as you want to capitalize with this knives on top, but you would also love to leave either knives on top or pelt on top. So what do you think the play is from red if she attacks here? Do you expect to see the basket into potentially just hitting right into the take a knee that we just saw?
Yeah, so I do like ears or basket here normally. It is diminished a little bit by the fact that we know that there's a knee. So if Jason wants to play it safe and not risk the 4 value attack here into a feint, which is what you usually want to try to line up for red into feints, we could just see the knee. But if it's something like a Once Upon a Time, that would be best case scenario if Daredevil knees, because he's going to heal back to full, because he's going to get at least a 1 boost, even if he hits a feint, and goes to 17. But then he's going to take 3 from the after combat of Once Upon a Time because he's because defender resolves first, of course, and so that would be the ideal here for Zero, either getting a 4 into a feint if Jason tries to guard against the Once Upon a Time, or getting a Once Upon a Time into that knee that we just saw and basically wasting the healing for Daredevil. So it's really a mind game here, and Jason might be thinking perhaps it's more likely that it's a Once Upon a Time because he knows that I have the knee, and that's the best case scenario for him. But if Zero's thinking that, and Jason's thinking that Zero's thinking that, well, then maybe Zero's actually thinking about that, and you see where this goes. It goes down an infinite loop where you kind of just have to make those 50-50 calls sometimes and hope that you get them right based on what your opponent's likely to be doing.
Yeah, it then becomes a then I can't choose the cup in front of you situation.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think I would lean more towards a 4 here, because even if the knee goes into that, like you're probably at best Daredevil's going back up 1 HP, and if he's netting 1 HP off of a knee, it's really not the end of the world. And best case scenario is he hits a feint, and you basically break even, and he loses that feint. Actually going to see a boxer, which is also pretty good into the 4, though this does allow red to get value off of the huntsman heal, which I mean, with how long huntsman is going to stick around, probably something you're just going to have to accept at some point. But I have seen Daredevil go a little bit more aggro on red and look to just take her down if that heal is not early on. So an interesting choice here to go with the boxer, but I think that it probably ends up being overall a little bit safer, because even if it is the Once Upon a Time there, at least you're not wasting that knee healing like as much as you would be if you block with that. It looks like we're gonna see a maneuver
it's
here.
fascinating. What do you think the play is for Daredevil here, sitting at 6 cards, Mike? It's just an uncomfortable card amount.
All gas, no brakes on this train. Give it to him. No, I don't. Both players are very big value gamers. So Jason's probably thinking right now, what is the best value that I can get right? Seeing that I could be getting a mouth coming up here. I could be getting, basket, whatever the case may be. Personally, I would attack with that knee and maneuver away is what I would probably do. But that's why I'm not in the seat that they're in, right?
So
So,
you're saying Jason's a big Wendy's 5x5 guy?
oh, for sure.
I could
Oh,
also
for
see
sure.
going in with a Man Without Fear here, because Pelt is on top, so that is your best option other than feint into something like Mouth. And then you could maneuver away after that. But yeah, it's definitely an awkward spot to be in if you're Daredevil here.
Yeah, I don't think he's comfortable with anything, unfortunately. I really
Yeah.
don't. I think he's like, oh, this is at least I'm thinking I'd be in a tough spot against Red right here.
If it is Man Without Fear, that 2 value, do you think he boosts and just plays into that healing from Little Red? Or do you think he just leaves it and leaves the card on top of his deck?
It's
actually a really good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Stop bringing good questions to us.
I feel like you're gonna have to commit to something, and since you're not really gonna be pumping damage into Huntsman, ideally outside of Devils, like I don't know, I feel like you probably lean towards going for the damage still, and then just accepting that the healing's probably gonna come out at some point. Because that also means that if she's taking actions to heal, she's not attacking you and putting pressure on your defenses. So that is something. There is something to be said there too. Fortunately for Daredevil here, we do see a knee used, hits a grappling hook, heals him back up to full, and uses up basket from Red, which is still fine because she doesn't take any damage from the attack, but it's not like her ideal scenario. I think.
Yeah, I think you're pretty happy with that as Daredevil. I think. Interesting to not see 3 move potentially from Red, as you mentioned, because Red can use the symbols for a lot more than, say, Huntsman. So moving one more space. Maybe didn't want to end into Huntsman's zone to potentially have ranged attacks coming at you.
It's true. Huntsman is ranged, even though that doesn't come up too often. He can attack from range. He can attack with the 4 from range, which sometimes is just fine. You don't always need to be adjacent for it, though you want to be as often as you can. But something like stones from range, especially since Wild was set up on basket, does get a little bit dicey. Um, Especially because at that point, like, if you have a feint as Daredevil, you're kind of at a 50-50 again, because stones would be pretty annoying if it goes into anything but the feint. But if you feint and it's just the blank 4, well, now you feel really silly, of course. So definitely something that I would probably want to avoid is giving Huntsman the opportunity to attack from range like that. So I can understand not doing that, though. As stated, it does put him within single maneuver, unboosted of Red with a Wild on top. So she's got potentially a lot of options here.
Yeah, we see these players illustrating why the timer was implemented.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that it has been nice to just make sure that people are able to set aside like, they know the average amount of time that they have to set aside when committing to these tournaments, and once we hit bracket, it's best of 3, so it's even more important to have that that timely play. But yeah, definitely a lot of situations in matchups like this where taking your time to really think it through is great. It's something I always advocate for, especially in the middle of games, just figuring out kind of where you're going to go from here and figuring out that game plan, like we kind of saw in the previous game, and then being able to execute turns a bit faster from then on out. Because the worst thing that can feel really bad is if you end up with a lot of time left at the end of the game, and there was a point where you either didn't think something through or missed something and end up misplaying, and it costs you the game. If you had used a little bit more of your time, then you know. You don't get any bonus for having a bunch of time left at the end, so it's something that you want to utilize to the maximum extent. But at the same time, you also need to be careful not to use too much of it, because it can lead to endgame scenarios where you might not have as much time to think through those tough spots, like we kind of saw in the Daredevil position last game. So it's a fine balance, but one that I've found interesting to kind of adapt to compared to playing before the timer was implemented. But overall, I think it's been a really nice change for sure. Just to make sure that stuff like 3-hour games and stuff don't become an issue, especially on final streams like this, which take a lot of stuff on the back end and a lot of time commitment from a lot of people already. So
I think it's interesting to use it all so early. I think you frequently need the time in the end game scenarios, and even kind of like to reevaluate what might be your win con in the middle of the game. So to be like 4 turns into this game and have both of them using more than half of their bank time just fascinates me. I tend to play much more quickly and recklessly, and I've certainly come into the scenario like you were saying, Darkblade, where I ended with 4 minutes in the bank and I lost the game due to a stupid mistake. So that's my tendency, but it's just interesting to kind of watch these guys play out.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be dependent on the specific matchup or whatnot, and how familiar you are with something. Like, if you're familiar with a matchup, you can play it a lot quicker usually and make those plays just because you're used to kind of seeing the general game plans and stuff. But something that I would generally look for people who are wanting to figure out how to manage their time most effectively is looking to, on average, probably, if you're going to take some of those mid-game turns to think more, you probably want to leave yourself with at least like a couple minutes in the bank, because you don't want to get down to where you're only 1 minute left because you're out of bank time and have to think through those really crucial turns quickly, to your point. So definitely an interesting balance for sure. And we do see a
holy
first
cow,
double
what
here.
a haul. Man,
yeah, that
poor
was
defenses back.
really
Solid
good double.
stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
that was a huge devil. And to not have to take 3 damage on the clapback from that, that is really solid.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, all right. Fascinating, fascinating.
So we're gonna see an offensive stones here.
I like it because you use the swords, right, or the knives, and then you'll be able to, potentially uh, throw the. You see the knives that you're able to use, and then you can throw the 6 after this, and get some value still there. So we do see a breather get hit for 1 damage, and then also a great hit.
Yeah, that was
Kind
good
of a
for
boxer.
Daredevil.
So yeah, really solid. Losing a breather is obviously a little nerve-wracking. You got to
Mhm.
maybe try and find that devil soon, to try and get that back as quickly as possible, if you're able to do that. But unfortunately, they'll probably be buried. So you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta play a little hesitant to actually have 2 breathers right next to each other in the discard pile that deep. So
Yeah.
honestly, I think if since he has, we see if there's no boost from John, if he keeps Flower on top, I would love to see a maneuver and attack with another devil if he happens to have it, or draw it if he has the defense to survive afterwards. They just go ahead and get those breathers back, and just play well.
Absolutely. And then it gives you the opportunity if you decide you want to just go ahead and kill the huntsman before you see some of that healing come out, and you've gotten that much value out of your early devils into the huntsman. I think you have the option to do that.
Yeah. The nightmare. I mean, it wouldn't have been like the worst thing by any means, but it would have been even more scary for the Daredevil side if you saw something like a devil on that knee discard, because then you'd have 3 of your 5 potential devils in the discard. And you would have actually only gotten 2 of the 3 healing from the devil being discarded anyway, so you wouldn't have even gotten value from 3 boost. So yeah, hitting that boxer much better. Still in a fine spot as far as the recursion goes. But yeah, the other thing that I like that you mentioned is trying to finish off Huntsman before Red can find the healing, because there's been times where I've taken damage as Red, sometimes even undefended attacks, just thinking, oh well, I'll heal her back up because Huntsman's in a fine spot, and then the opponent finds a way to kill him because the healing is buried, and then you're looking at Red with 4 or 5 health missing, without finding that healing in time when you thought you were going to be able to, and you can be put in a little bit of an awkward spot where your opponent can start kind of burning you down, because while Red does have some good value blocks in terms of basket, and if she has the symbol lined up ears, and stones, of course, if she can get the discard, taking attacks over her 2 value blocks starts to add up over time for sure. We do see that immediate devil.
Another haul. Holy cow.
Yeah,
And
this is crazy.
hey, Mike, I'd bet on black.
Sorry, I'm still getting over the timer comment he made earlier. I can hold on a second. So long ago, but I can't stop laughing.
Oh man. So in order to do that, actually, what do you think Daredevil has in hand defensively? Probably 2 defenses. What do you think they are, given what we've seen?
Oh gosh, I don't know that he cares to get that back. He's probably willing to take a little bit of damage. I could definitely see him having a feint. We haven't seen any of those come out yet. But what else? He really, I mean, all of his options are available to him. I think. I would guess that there's a feint. That's my insight.
And Zach, do you think this is another 4? He's already used 3 of them, and he's only seen 13 cards in his deck. But do you think this is probably another 4?
I have a hard time. It's either that or maybe just a hands. I could see a hands here. I actually am probably leaning more towards a hands. It could still be a 4. Daredevil at this point would not mind boosting a feint if you do line up a feint into the 4, but I don't think there's a reason for Daredevil feint in the first place, because you're not threatening anything on offense as Red, other than hands, I suppose. But whether Daredevil wants to feint the hands or not is iffy. I think he's actually probably fine with it at this point, seeing that he's recurred the breathers, so he is now perfectly fine with his devil situation, and will not mind breathering back feints at this point. So if he throws one into a 4 and has the blind boost to not really take any damage off of it, I think he's fine with that. So I could see him fainting here. I think the hands is probably most likely, but you can't really get too punished by fainting here if you do have one available.
Yeah,
Even though it's not like the best spot to feint.
It makes me curious how nervous Jason was into the stones in the belly. If he was sitting on a devil and a breather, he's in my opinion probably more happy with losing the devil or the breather so that he can have the turn that he had last time.
Yeah, for sure.
So, or breather, sorry, yes.
The other interesting thing is asking about what Daredevil has defensively to be fine with going here. I do think it's probably likely he has at least something. A feint would not surprise me, but I think I agree with Ashword. The only I don't think you mind taking too much damage because you're at full health and you still have all your knees back in deck. You've used already a few. I think the only spot you would really get in trouble is if you took an undefended long have I sought you or two, and even then it might not be the end of the world if it's just one and then you block another something. So yeah, it is the hands.
Wow.
Besides not to use a defense here. Definitely would have been a bold take if it was a 4, but correctly calling out the hands and not wasting a defense on it. If he has the feint, maybe not wanting to use it, but might also just not have the feint. And nothing else is really worth blocking in the hands, so I like the take.
Jason must have at least 2 defenses in hand to be debating this long, but maybe he only has 1. He's trying to decide to take it or save the defense.
True.
Right.
Also
now
true.
John has his time to. Oh yeah, I guess he's just throwing another one.
Could be another hands. Could also be throwing it or mixing it up with a 4 now, wanting Jason to take again. And if Daredevil takes 6 undefended this turn, that starts to definitely turn things around for Red.
I would, yeah, absolutely. I think if you do have just the 1 defense, that's kind of where you were. I do see value in defending now.
Yeah.
If it is a feint and you do happen to hit a basket, oh well, you can, as you mentioned, blind boost it. If you do catch the hands, then you're all spot.
Me also makes sense.
Yeah. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Dang.
Daredevil likely going to go. So it doesn't get the full heal here, the full value here, but I'd still say that's probably ideal because even though you're not getting the full 3 healing, you're still going back up to full. And
you get that stupid card out of there.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need the full 3 at this point because you've been so good on health. Red's throwing so much at Daredevil, and hasn't effectively taken any damage.
It's crazy. Now that said, he does still have all of his main auto damage cards.
Yeah.
So the game hasn't progressed too much.
Yeah.
Other than, if we look at it, we've got just 3 discards in Daredevil's discard pile, and just a handful in his discard. 7 in Little Red's discard pile or so. So still pretty crazy how this game is going.
We do see that John's used 2 of his baskets, so it'll be interesting, as the game progresses, seeing if he can line up all his symbols perfectly, or he ends up having to kind of waste a few cards for practically a blink effect.
That's a great point. Yeah, lots of knives have been used, but there are still a ton left.
At this point, I'm wondering if it's getting to the spot where Zero might want to play the Huntsman scheme to heal back to full on Red, just to show the Daredevil that she can do it too. But also, if you, after doing that, if you just let Huntsman go down to the next Devil so Daredevil stops getting all of this cycling nonsense, because then you start to force him to engage with Red's auto damage a bit more. Though I still don't think he'd be in a terrible spot in that case because he's got all of his feints and the free reign to use breathers to get them back pretty readily.
Absolutely. I think now what I like to do at this point in the Daredevil spot is your deck count is basically even. You're basically even. Red has 2 passes. You have 5 passes left. I actually like seeing a couple of those passes used either for breathers to get great defenses back or through adversities, if and only if you're really solid on the defensive side, just to kind of push that fatigue game into more of an advantage for you, so that if you do get a devil off and you maybe grab one of those schemes back or something, that just even puts you in a more favorable position. So I love seeing stuff like that. Sorry, Zach. The hesitation there. Do you think John was wondering if he should play the path, never leave the path card for its effect to teleport adjacent to Daredevil and attack twice?
That is interesting. It's definitely not something that you see often done using path for the other two effects. And I really don't think there's going to be many times you see it used for the draw. That's going to be extremely situational. Maybe against someone like T-Rex, for example, which can be a rough matchup for red otherwise. But the warp is something that can catch people off guard, and can definitely be used to great effect because of that surprise factor. And if you can set it up, I actually did do that very thing against Daredevil in pools during this tournament as red, and used path after aggressing him a bunch early on. He was pretty low hand count, and I warped in and attacked him, I think with 2 baskets or something, and one of them I think went undefended if I'm not mistaken. And so that's like the dream scenario. With 4 cards, you might be a little less inclined, especially since it seems like Jason has at least a few options for defense. But I think it was possibly a strong consideration. So it might give away a little bit to Jason that there might be a never leave the path available, which currently can still be used for that warp on the next turn if Daredevil does not attack this go around.
And Daredevil might be about ready to faint that hand. It's getting annoying.
Yeah. If he's drawing them. Do you think there's an argument here, Mike, to just kill the Huntsman?
I think you still want him for devil power. So personally, or you want him to get I would say maybe you do want the one-on-one at this point. Maybe you are looking at deck counts, but I mean, anytime you can get a free devils off, why not? In my opinion, but
I think you're in a pretty good spot if.
Yeah,
I think you're in a pretty good
still
spot
think-
if Huntsman dies at this point, because red is missing that 2 health that she could otherwise get back, and then you're actually you're going back to more cards in deck than you started the game with. You'd go back to 19 in deck, 3 in hand, and you start with 17 in deck, 5 in hand at the start of the game as Daredevil. So he actually would have gained on exhaustion compared to the beginning of the game, which is not something most characters can even do in the first place. So yeah, I actually don't hate if you have the devil here, hoping to maybe just finish Huntsman off. He could block with a 2 and go down to 1, but either you're blocking with a wolf skin, in which case you're drawing 2 cards and only further hurting yourself in exhaustion, or you're blocking with a blank 2, which feels really bad for a Once Upon a Time or a Stone. So yeah, we do see Huntsman go down here. We'll not get that healing value, and will not be able to cycle off him anymore, but like I said, 19 cards in deck for Daredevil is insane.
I will say, I mean, this is the easiest job I've had deck tracking during one of these commentary calls at any point. It's
make
really,
sure you put cards back.
I'm grateful.
Back into the Daredevil deck. Like set the ones aside that you theoretically have in hand, and just be like, nah, those are in deck now too.
All right, we do see the Into the Woods.
Into yet another hand.
No.
I like that theoretically Daredevil could, in the right circumstances, and he's actually not too far off from doing so this game, not that you'd want to, but he could run into a situation where he actually has all the cards in his deck and nothing in hand and nothing in discard.
Crazy.
I think he's the only one that can do that, because Winter Soldier, who's the other one that has like the crazy recursion, will always have at least 1 reprogram in the discard pile.
Yeah.
Wild.
Faint? Aha.
Finally see a feint come out. Oof, and it's a good one.
Ooh, great feint.
Yeah,
That's
because that would have
huge.
been a really good devil too. Especially because
Yeah.
red gets another action, so she would have been able to. Yeah, and
There's
this
gonna
one is
be
going to go
hands to get it. Yeah,
unblocked
I was gonna say to get the stones back.
and get the stones back, but the hand's been put in a lot of work. It's a tough choice.
It really is.
You get the
I-
guaranteed stones back, which is definitely nice, and it puts Pelt on top, which is great defensive symbol for red. But this hands has been put in work.
Yeah, if you don't take back hands, you are just limited on the number amounts of attacks you can make, right? And he's been really lucky that hands has just kept attacking, making it so that you don't have to make as many attacks. Or sorry, you don't have to use as many cards for attacks, right? You're just using that pressure.
Same card over and over. Yep.
So it is interesting. I respect it.
Yeah, I can see the argument for either or. It's not often that you're probably going to get that opportunity to get something back, because I think if you save it for later, like maybe trying to get back a Once Upon a Time or something, which is the juiciest thing to get back with, well, the juiciest thing to get back with hands is actually the heal if they're going for red instead of Huntsman, but that pretty much never happens in competitive. Um, but yeah, the Once Upon a Time is usually your best target. But I feel like if Daredevil knows that you've got a hands floating around and you have Once Upon a Time on the top, he's probably just gonna feint you to not let you have the opportunity to get it. Because even if you line up something else like Basket, even if he has to take the 2 because he can't blind boost it, he's still gonna be fine with stopping you from recurring the Once Upon a Time. So I think taking stuns back when you can is fine, but if the other hands gets fainted at some point, Reds might start to run into an issue with like those resources as you're talking about.
It's all about the resources, as Mike highlighted earlier. It's
Yeah.
all about the value game.
Value game. Both of
And
them are
holy
great
cow.
at it.
Has Jason gotten some value with Daredevil this game?
This is probably one of the craziest Daredevil games I've seen for that.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about the positioning here? I mean, here, still 3 away. Do you like that? Do you want to maybe force 4 away so that he can't use the scheme and he'd have to use a 2 boost instead? I mean, we see him ending his movement. I'm just kind of studying the options.
Yeah, I don't mind it too much because there's only 1 Into the Woods left. It is the Wolfsbane one, which does potentially let her have the eyes. But if you have a feint, you're not too worried about that. And the difference between a 1 boost and a 2 boost is actually pretty much irrelevant for red, because the only 1 boost she has are cards she's never going to want to boost with, Stones and Once Upon a Time.
Oh, that's great.
Everything else is 2 boost or higher, I believe. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much of a difference staying within 3 at this point, especially if you have a feint on deck.
Do we see a feint? Boxer.
See
I
a
love
boxer.
the boxer. Ooh.
Okay, if this hits a feint, it will not deal damage back to red, but if it hits anything else, it will, and that's going to be pretty good for Daredevil here.
Reroll always happens.
Yeah, that's best case scenario for Daredevil. I mean, you are theoretically at that point fine to
Holy
use
cow.
adversities, but it's not like you need to be using them. So yeah, again, that's probably the only other thing that's no. I was gonna say maybe Man Without Fear, but then you're taking an extra damage from Stones. So I actually think that adversity was probably the best hit for
Literally the
Daredevil.
best card in the deck to hit, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
I got a question for the group, maybe. Has Daredevil lost an interaction this game? Like
I
in
don't
reality?
think so.
I don't
Like
think
he
so.
really hasn't.
No.
Like, he really hasn't.
No, it
Like-
started with the 5 value, the effective 5 value knee into the first long have I saw you, and it's just been all wins since then. It reminds me of a game that Zero played against Dracula in the past, where basically every single interaction, that's a one that's rougher for red than the Daredevil matchup in my opinion, but it was one of those where red can definitely win if she gets the right interactions, but everything was going wrong, and I think that's similarly been the case for Daredevil here so far. Just kind of to your point, like winning most of these interactions. I think the best red got was getting hands into like a boxer at one point, but outside of that, Daredevil's taken 2 hands at the proper times. The stones haven't really hit great things. Knees have been hitting pretty solid all across the board. So yeah, it's just been all Daredevil this game, and it shows in the game state at the moment.
Now you're in the spot where red really just has to boost kind of constantly
Yeah.
in order to aggress, and just losing 2 cards. So you're at 6 cards, you draw 1 up to 7, you boost back down to 6, you attack, and if it's anything but hands, you go down to 5. So you're not netting anything, you're actually losing stuff, which is just,
Yeah.
it's just a rough spot to be in.
And this is where the map starts to get a lot better for Daredevil once Huntsman is down. It's actually something that you'll notice a lot. This is in particular, even some maps that are good for red at times, like Baskerville and Solomon's, into fighters, especially with their own sidekicks. But even solo fighters like Daredevil here on something like Solomon's, up until the point Huntsman goes down, those maps can be really favorable for you. For the passageway maps, because you can block off your sidekick for a bit. On a map like this, you can pretty much, as we saw, position so you're always within range of Daredevil with one of your fighters. But as soon as you lose Huntsman, you lose a lot of that positioning. And Red does not have any movement on any of her combat cards. So your opponent never has to play around her moving unexpectedly. The closest they have to do is play around into the woods. But with only one of those left, that's not as much of a concern for Jason at this point in the game. And if Red is having to boost, not only is she wasting her resources, even if it is a card like Long Have I Sought You or the heal, Grim Tail, you're still using those symbols that you might want to save for a later point in the game. Though they're still the better options compared to having to boost with a card that Little Red can still play, of course.
I would love to see Daredevil. Yeah, that's the spot, I think. That's not the spot. That's the spot. No, just so that can't maneuver and just do 2 auto damage to you.
Yep. Maneuver path would otherwise be.
I think you see a breather here for a feint.
That would be gross. Yep, but that is going to be the exact play, and we'll probably be seeing a bit more of that.
Do it if you want to pause the timer.
Yep. So yeah, real good spot for Daredevil. Continues to be just winning position upon winning position, and yeah, even here, Red cannot maneuver path to get value out of that wild. Could path first and do the double attack like we were talking about before, but 5 cards in hand for Daredevil and a guaranteed feint makes that not as appealing. I'm honestly struggling to see, like, Red's been chipping away, but there's still all the knees left, a bunch of breathers left, just as many feints potentially. Unless Daredevil just starts drawing a bunch of yellows and reds and can't do anything. But the thing is one of the yellows gets him back his best defenses. So that's not even, so he'd have to draw like the Devils and Man Without Fear and the Adversities, but that's a pretty specific hand. And otherwise I think he's going to be in a really good spot, and he's eventually just going to outvalue Red here. Because now he's also ahead of Red on deck. So just finding that 13 damage, I think, is going to be very challenging for her at this point in the game.
How does Red win? Like, I don't know. It comes off strong, I get it, but I don't know how she wins.
In this position...
She wins because she's piloted by zeroskatr12.
Yes.
There you go.
In this position, I think she really needs to win the mind games with the 4s into feints, and then she needs to get the auto damage stuff into things like Devil, when Daredevil eventually does have to do that, or Once Upon a Time's past feints. And she still theoretically can get there. It's just going to be very difficult, especially if Jason plays it smart and makes sure he always has the tools to kind of counteract some of those things that she's got going on. Because just knee by itself is pretty great. Not as great here potentially if this is a Eyes. This is actually a really good time to probably attack with a 4, because Eyes wants to be feinted really badly here. You do not want to use a knee into an Eyes here, because that's where Red starts to pull things back potentially if she cancels and ignores your knee here. So I think feint is the most attractive option, but because Zero knows that there's a guaranteed feint in hand, might try to slip in one of the two remaining fours, either the basket or the ears. And I think the ears is probably better because basket is just more flexible later on.
And now I know you said feint is the most attractive option, but looking at the art on feint, I really find it to be some of his most unattractive. Mike, what would you say the most attractive art on Daredevil's cards is?
Have you seen Breather? Dude's gotten the I'm just kidding.
He's been through it, that's for sure.
He's been
I gotta
through
say,
it, man.
I actually think through adversity, probably in my opinion. A Man Without Fear is pretty cool too with the buildings, but through adversity, I think maybe wins out a little bit because that's also the foil card for Daredevil, and that card in foil is absolutely gorgeous.
What do you think this is here, Darklid?
I think I would
really
want to
agree
see
with
an
you that
ears.
Awesome. I'm curious to hear your inclination.
I do think that ears is probably what I would ideally want to play here as red. But it's either that or the eyes, and it's really if you want to risk that. It's. Do you think that Jason's worried enough about eyes to feint? And if the answer is yes, then you want to hit with a 4. If you think that he just is expecting you to try to fake out with the 4, then you go for a the eyes. But yeah, I mean your ideal for red here is eyes into knee, and I think that because of the risk of that potential blowout and starting to crawl back for red, I would probably just go with the feint here, and if it gets into a 4, you just kind of accept it. But
I like Ashley's call out here. What do you guys think about a boxer here?
yeah, actually, that's something that I didn't consider because you don't mind as much if that gets stopped within eyes. Ooh, okay. This is great for red. This is the first time that she has had a really significant combat interaction go in her favor, and that's the kind of stuff she's going to need to claw back here.
We got an interaction for red. Here it comes. The turnaround. The turnaround.
And I don't think it's going to happen, but like ideal situation for red here is Daredevil attacks you with a devil and you mouth it, but I don't think Jason's going to let that happen. No real reason to risk walking into that.
We are running out of kind of flower symbols for the next eyes. It's going to be on probably stones. We see the boost because it's either stones or your auto damage one, or your last basket. That's it.
We do have the Into the Woods as well. That's actually probably.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
We'll want to see it on. Yeah, because that could also potentially get a move 3 in there. But yeah, it is something to keep in mind that you are running out for the eyes.
Ooh, he did have the boxer. Not that it mattered. Well, it did matter in case.
Yeah, it would have been better to have ignored canceled because then you'd still have the knee, but yeah. Breather. Yep. Back a knee, I suppose. Yep.
Yeah.
God, even when you feel like you just got one step forward, it feels like you got gut punched and was forced 2 back.
Yeah.
Like,
and of course, getting the eyes into the knee is great, but it also gives you one less cancel, so Daredevil's even less worried about using breathers to get stuff back like that. So with another knee in play here, you could see a boost with a knives, and then go for a mind game again between something like Once Upon a Time and a 4. Because you went for the eyes last time, Jason might be more inclined to feint, so a 4 would potentially catch him a little bit off guard, but sure he also has that in mind as a possibility. So again, really coming down to where do you throw your important stuff, and it's a lot harder when you know that he has a feint, right? Because at least if you don't have that knowledge, he might just not have the feint, and you can go for it and hope he doesn't have it. But when you know he has it, it's like, how far down in the mind game do you go? And that's why red can be so fun, but also very difficult at times to figure out exactly the best route. And we do see the Into the Woods, so there will be one attack after one action after this. Is it just another eyes? Does he go for the other eyes right away, trying to catch in maybe the knee once more?
We know he has feint in hand, correct? And we
Yeah.
know he has knee in hand.
Yep. And that's the thing, just like the way that Red can kind of be tricky with her symbols, if you know what Daredevil's got from getting back breathers, you can be tricky just with kind of what you're swinging with anyway, because especially if you have, an attack that, or a couple attacks that are good into one of the blocks but not the other one, like it really does put pressure on Daredevil to make that right call.
And just playing against John a couple times, this might not be for this specific interaction, but he always says he likes the threat, right? Like, so the
Yeah.
threat of the eyes. So him not using it here, in my opinion, is probably what's going to happen. He won't use the extra eyes just because he wants the threat of it versus the actual use of it.
Yeah. Once they're gone, like that this whole mind game gets a lot simpler
It's
for the
just,
Daredevil side.
yeah,
Oh, but he goes for it.
didn't.
And he
But
got
he
it 2
didn't.
times in a row.
But he
Holy
did
cow.
it. What a time to be alive.
I was hoping in the back of my mind that we'd see another eyes into another knee just to see Red trying to get back in this thing.
I haven't loved being so wrong in so long.
Oh wait, this is still Red's turn, right?
Yeah,
Or-
Reddit still has one more interaction because wasn't it Into the Woods? Did I miss something?
Did she maneuver first? She might have maneuvered first.
I
Looks
don't
like
know.
both
I don't know if it was a
players.
maneuver.
Yeah, it looks like there might have been because both players seem to be of the assumption that it's Daredevil's turn now. And I think that makes sense based on deck counts currently.
Or maybe he boosted with Into the Woods. I'm not too sure how it went down, but either way,
Yeah, that's very possible.
yep, got the feint.
Okay, does get the feint into the mouth, which is very good for Daredevil, of course.
You hate to see it. I wonder if there was an option there. I know the interaction happened very much more quicker than we thought. Was there an option just to take there, thinking he was going to offensive feint first action?
I could see it. It feels really bad if it's the Devil, though, because now Daredevil's kind of been able to play the same mind games that Red's been playing the last couple turns. Where if it is something like the feint, you don't want to block with mouth, of course, but if it's the Devil, taking 4 and not getting that 4 damage back into Daredevil is big at this point. We are going to see Path for 2, and Daredevil is getting fairly low here.
He's getting into that auto damage is going to kill me range. The game's speeding up for Red. John must have his sight focused on his win condition, because that's what John does when he speeds up his gameplay. Is he knows what it is and it's not changing.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's all based off of auto damage. He probably has the other mouth in hand right now. I mean, still, even if the mouth gets feinted on offense, he still would have the. I don't know how many more symbols he has for the knives, but the 2 would do it if he doesn't get a knee off.
We've got a lot of knives left. We got both wolfskin, or 2 wolfskins. We got a mouth. We've got a long have I saw you, a wild. Yeah, lots of knives left.
Dad, if John ends up winning this, I'm just gonna need you to come with me to the casino real quick, and I'm just gonna point at football teams, and you tell me if they're gonna win or not, and then we'll go from there. Okay? If you picked Oklahoma over Texas today, good on you, because Oklahoma ended up winning that. So.
Got the resident clairvoyant. Yeah, at this point, Daredevil just kind of backing off, going between those edge spots on the map, making it more difficult for Red to reach. In fact, right now, the only way she could like reach and path, for example, is to not only end adjacent to Daredevil, in which case he could Devil and back off, though she might not mind that if she can set up a wild. Or I guess if she passed, then she would also set up a pelt. But Daredevil could always maybe feint and Devil, etc. So, yeah, Daredevil's going to have to be very careful at this point to not have something disastrous like a mouth go into a Devil, but he still has some take a knees for healing, and if he can get off some of that healing soon, especially, he's going to feel a lot more comfortable in this position. Because 5 is pretty precarious. Theoretically, 5 is just a path plus Once Upon a Time away from death.
Yeah, I really think we see Daredevil starting to regret not throwing a feint earlier into one of those threes. So I do expect to see maybe a feint here offensively, because if you throw it into mouth, if you throw like a knee into mouth, that's pretty dangerous because you'll probably net a loss of 1 health on there, and then you're in kind of a really scary ground. They're at the point too where the deck counts are pretty even, but the health totals are in red favor. So I think Daredevil needs 1 more cycle in order to be comfortable. In my opinion.
He has all this number of passes left, though.
Yeah, 3 passes left. She has 2.
Looking at that spot, if Daredevil went in and attacked with something like a feint to stop the other mouth, and Red did mouth, then we would theoretically.
Oh, he's got overdrive.
Oh yeah, he's got overdrive. Sorry. Theoretically, he would be in a spot getting rid of a boxer. Yes, he would theoretically be in a spot where, even if mouth gets feinted, Red would start next to him. Let's say she starts with a basket and he feints, trying to stop the Once Upon a Time. Then his feints are gone. He takes 2, and then he just dies to the. Well, he doesn't necessarily die to the Once Upon a Time because he could knee it and get some healing before the after combat happens. But that would put him in a pretty precarious spot. So, avoiding situations like that, which would be best case scenario for Red and be one of her main outs if Daredevil isn't careful. Just something to keep in mind, which is why probably see him deciding to stay back there and do a breather. Okay, we are going to see the knives. So we've been talking about the 2 4s remaining for a while, and we still haven't seen either of them. So still a mind game. This time, instead of it being the eyes or the 4s, it's going to be the Once Upon a Time or the 4s. Oh, never mind. We're just going to see a path. Which puts Daredevil down to 3, which now means if Red gets a defensive mouth or Once Upon a Time that doesn't go into a feint while the symbol's active, she could just win on the spot. Of course, Man Without Fear is still a way to not immediately die to the mouth at this point.
I will have everybody know that there was not 1 point of this matchup where I thought Little Red was out of this. Not 1 point did I ever think that Little Red was gonna just, fall over and not be able to get back up. Not having Daredevil get to full health like 3 times. Chad making the biggest call out, which was, "Hey Chad, how does Little Red come back from this?" And I believe your words were something along the line of, "You win this because you're zeroskatr12." And I think we're seeing that right now is why he's so closely in this. I'm not going to say he's going to win yet. I don't want to make any predictions, but that's why we are in the position that we currently are.
Yep.
The timer is so stressful.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is a huge combat interaction, I feel.
Yes.
I was ready to just call it. It was like 10 health to 14. I'm like, let's just go to game 3.
This is a 50-50, I feel, for John. If he throws out like just the 2, or he could take it, right? That's the scenario. But if he plays the 2 card draw 1, calling out the offensive feint, that's like a huge play. If he throws mouth and it's the feint, then that's a loss for him. But if he
I think he's gonna find spot if it's a feint to a mouth. Like, it definitely is much worse than getting the feint into the skin, but it's kind of the spot that I talked about a few turns ago where it puts knives on top. And then Jason has to wonder if he's attacking with a Once Upon a Time or a basket. I guess a knee is always a safe block there, but
Yeah, that's what I
it
was
still
saying.
potentially puts you down to 1 if you hit a feint. It depends on if there's a feint left in deck still or not. And Jason at this point will know if there's a feint left in deck, whereas Zero will not.
Yeah.
Am I incorrect in saying if he uses mouth and it's knee, Jason loses immediately, right?
Yes.
Well, not
Because
immediately. He takes 1 combat damage, and then
yes,
he.
yeah.
Oh,
Red would go
okay,
down to
got it.
9, and then
Okay,
Daredevil
yeah.
takes 3, and the healing would happen after he's already down to 0 and removed from the board, which would happen right as he takes that 3.
So this is gotta. Is there any man without fears? What can you safely attack with this feint and man without fear? Right? Like in
Yes, if you
theory.
don't want to immediately die to the crackback, or the auto damage from mouth. But even like Man Without Fear putting you down to 1 is really scary.
Oh yeah, because the then basket just kills you. So it's oof.
Yes,
Oof.
actually. Or
Jason's
the other
probably got
4.
that thought too. My God, this is intense.
Yeah.
So I got coin flips.
Oh,
Let's
this
see.
makes sense.
Yeah. I honestly don't know what I'd be attacking with here as Daredevil. I'd be
love-
scared to throw anything.
I'd love to see Red come back because that's just a cool story. But I'd also
Yeah.
love to see the game 3
Yeah.
because
yeah.
I just prefer those in the sets. But yeah,
I
I
also
mean,
am interested to see the Winter
This is
Soldier Red
crazy.
matchup because I
it could be.
haven't seen
We
him
could
yet.
just see what happened last game where it just kind of ended just on he hit the feint at the top deck. This could be just he threw the knee. I played my mouth and there it is. So yeah,
I think John has the mouth. I just don't
Yeah.
know if he's. Yeah, there it is.
And there it is.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Wow.
okay.
And with that, Zero will be advancing to the grand finals of Summer of Legends 2023 to face off against Phantom X tomorrow.
Was to do this.
Wow, what a game. And what a comeback. Holy cow.
Don't call it a comeback. We all knew what was going to happen.
I will
I'm just
also
kidding.
note
It
that
is a
up until
comeback.
this
This
point,
is incredible.
up until this very moment, because Red will take 1 from this combat before Daredevil goes down to 0, I believe that's the first damage Red took between now and when we noted, Daredevil's got 13 health left, and Red's got 10, and is not looking great in exhaustion in the long game. And then Red just won. She started winning all of the combat interactions, and if you're gonna lose most of them early, and then turn it around when it matters and start winning those interactions, that's that's what's gonna matter. So, yeah, wow. Let's listen to the players here post game.
It's also scary, yeah.
Yeah, so my thought was like, right, if I play this and you feint, cool, now I have knives set up, so now you're threatened still by the Once Upon a Time, so you wasted a feint, now you're down to 1 feint. You don't have any breathers left, so you literally have 1 feint to play with. You're going to have to come attack me eventually, I think, right? And you stop my card draw, which helps me in fatigue.
Yeah.
But obviously, if it's not a feint and I throw this and I draw 2, and then you're like, okay, cool, I got my devil off. Well, now I'm screwed because now I don't, you don't have to attack into mouth anymore. So ultimately, I figured take the chance while I got it. You might not have to attack me anymore the rest of the game, so might as well go for it because I can throw the Once Upon a Times on offense. So
It was unfortunate for me that when I breathered back, I didn't have a knee or a feint, so I took the knee before the feint. And then when I maneuvered to attack this turn, I drew the second knee. I was like, oh, I wish that was 50-50. Oh, man. Yeah.
Right.
Because the
that's
feint also staying in my deck meant that the knee was much worse. I was like, oh, man, all of this. And now feint and knees are getting very close to not mattering at all. I'm like, I have to manufacture a situation in which you've taken maybe 1 hit with into fatigue, and I kill you with devil or a couple. So it was close to that too, whether I was going to just through adversity and run and force you to come. Probably should have done that, but it was close.
Yeah, dude, really close, really well done. I honestly, how are you feeling in the early game? Because I felt like this game was over after the
Yeah,
first
no,
few
I felt like
interactions.
it was sand through my fingers. So yeah, I feel like I'm sure that I bobbled it at some point, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, there was two 50-50s on. I have a feint in my hand. You know, I have a feint in my hand, and you attack with
Yep.
it. And
Mhm.
and it was. I mean, it's one of those things where you like one way. Like if it's not, if both of those aren't, it felt like the type of thing where like I'm gonna auto win because I'm gonna get the knee, and now I'm to a safe distance, and
Oh
now
yeah.
I can like truly feint. Um,
Yep.
but if I
Everything. Yeah.
faint and you have one of your two fours, because then like I'm in a world of hurt. So
Yep.
it, yep. So it's one of those where I feel like I flipped some coins and lost at them, but I
Yeah.
won some early coins, so like it
You
comes out in the
did.
wash. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to bait a lot early, and you just weren't taking any of the baits, man. I lined up the symbols to threaten, right? And I just kept throwing like fours, and you just kept playing your threes, and I'm like, dang it, he just keeps doing it. So after eventually, you breathered back the feint, and I'm like, okay, he knows I know he has the feint. I've been throwing baits constantly. Maybe he'll still think it's a bait, right? So I threw the actual eyes and I got lucky and I got one through. And then the second time I was thinking, all right, he probably is going to sit there and play what are the chances game. Like what's the chances he has the second big
Yeah.
eyes here and throws it, still knowing that I have that feint. So those were huge. Those were the turning points for sure, right there. Those two interactions were what flipped it in my favor. Like from unwinnable to winnable, right? And then it was
Sorry about that. And yeah, so we're back here and listening to Zero talk a bit at the end there about his thought process on playing the mouth. I agree entirely. Where Daredevil is getting to a point where he might not need to attack Red much anymore, and so it was perhaps one of the last opportunities to get a really solid mouth. And if it was fainted, there were still options Red had going into her turn that would make things difficult on Daredevil, depending on what defenses he had remaining. Um, and so I definitely like going for the mouth there, because if it is something like knee, which Daredevil kind of had to go for to get back to a reasonable health total, and just hope that either Zero decides not to play the mouth, or that it's one of those bottom four cards that Red still did not have access to. I definitely understand the thought process from both players, and think that playing to your outs, like we're saying, is what you have to do in those spots. And in this case, Red had the card that she needed, and made the right call in playing it. So Zero is going to take it. So yeah, two crazy games. Like we were saying, a little bit of a shame when it doesn't go to game three, just because that's always a fun thing to see. And I would have been interested to see kind of how the players navigated the Winter Soldier Red matchup, but at the same time, two fantastic games. This second one here in particular is perhaps one of my favorites that I've had the pleasure to cast for in this tourney. So uh, awesome stuff from both players. What are you guys' kind of thoughts as we wrap up here on that second game?
It's fascinating how a 2-0 can look so different from this morning to this afternoon. And
Yeah.
like all four great players, great games, very exciting to watch. Definitely very different play style. So it'll be interesting tomorrow to see Phantom with a little more risky, a little more aggressive. Into John, very calculated, likes to take things to the end game, and kind of see how those two clash tomorrow.
Yeah, I like highlighting that, like the different play styles, because while Zero's obviously capable of playing those aggressive fighters when he needs to, he does tend towards a more deliberate play style, playing that value game. I mean, it's one of the reasons that Yen is his favorite, is because she can play that game so well. Bigfoot can also do that, but has that flexibility with aggro, just like Yen does, as we saw the combo in Daredevil in the first one. And I find that Red can also kind of play the flex game as far as her approach, depending on the matchup and the situation. So seeing that more uh, deliberate playstyle from Zero versus the high aggression that we saw from Phantom, like I've definitely seen him at times play the grind game when needed, but he can play aggro very well, as we saw in that first semifinal. So seeing how those two styles kind of interact with each other and clash will be very fun as we wrap up. Mike, what as we all saw, you predicted the comeback from Red. You never doubted for a
Obviously,
second.
not once.
What really made you think that she was going to take it, even when it looked pretty dire?
Obviously, it's because zeroskatr12 piloting, not to take away from Chad. But can I say, I think this is the second time John looked like he was in a very dire strait on stream in the finals weekend, where he was red and pulled off the win. The previous time, I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe it was actually against Chad on Herot, and Chad was Wukong.
Wukong.
Yeah, that was an incredible game too, where it looked out of sight for red, and randomly just pulls it from the great depths of the unmatched RNGesus win conditions. And you know, I Chad said it best. You can never count zeroskatr out of any game, and I mean that to this day too. There's no game you can ever count him out of. So he's on a tear. He's ready for He's ready for tomorrow. He's on a tear, folks.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to watch both of these players play. Not only have I enjoyed watching them today and commentating, but of course I've had tons of great matches with each of them, both in competitive and outside of it. And yeah, I between the two players that we were watching today and the three of you guys on commentary, this was like absolutely amazing. On top of the crazy gameplay that we got to see, so this has been an absolute treat, and I'm glad we were able to witness it here, and hopefully the viewers at home also enjoyed it just as much as I did.
Yeah, it was a blast. Just some very solid Daredevil games. I am a big fan of Daredevil. I know that people are coming around to him more and more, and so I just love seeing that. And you really see those decision points. And even though he was at 17 health for like, I don't know, most of the game, maybe even half or more than half of the game, he was at full health. Stuff can really start to crumble for him with just a couple of calls and stuff like that. So I really love that dynamic style of them, and we really got to see that you have to play pretty perfectly with Daredevil in order to do well. And even then, it can still just kind of crumble for you. So I really love seeing that side of fighters and seeing you can kind of play it a couple of ways. And I think a lot of people think that Daredevil is just kind of easy mode and you just do this, and you win. And I think we see here that really is not the case a lot of the time. And I think both Jason and John showcased that excellently.
Definitely. Well, with the crazy predictions from you today, what are your early thoughts on what tomorrow's going to look like between Zero and Phantom?
So I definitely see either player winning. I think what I'll say, Phantom is a little more risky, a little more, hey, if I win this combat interaction, I win the game. If I lose this combat interaction, I lose the game, in my opinion, at least from some of the games that I've seen. And so John is very value game oriented and very my opponent would never throw this because if they make the wrong call, then they just lose the game.
What are the chances,
right?
right?
I think Phantom can capitalize on that a lot. I think he kind of does very well at some unconventional plays that often win him the game. I think we saw that today earlier in the Winter Soldier game where Achilles was in a great spot, and then we saw Winter Soldier play in ways I haven't seen Winter Soldier play before and go ahead and get that victory. So I really think that we'll see John probably have a more solid long game lineup where if you see all of your cards, you are going to go ahead and win. And I think from Phantom we could see some more aggressive fighters that say, hey, my goal is to end the game before you see all of your cards. So I think that's probably what I'd see between the two of them. But that said, I don't want to discount Phantom being able to play the value game. He absolutely can play the value game. I know we saw that in Jason, his maybe top 8 versus Jason on the tournament that I ran, where he just ran from T-Rex, boosting with beast forms, and kind of able to do that, which is an unconventional play as well.
Yeah,
so I could see him I could see it go either way.
Yeah, I do like the highlight that you made on um, just the different styles, and particularly the Winter Soldier play. I have to say that after seeing some Winter Soldier games, for example, we saw one against Medusa that once it got to a certain point, like in that matchup, it's just kind of a done deal. You're just going through the motions. But in the one against Achilles, because Phantom got put behind early on, and it was a great start for Achilles. He had to start going like super aggro and putting Achilles in those awkward spots where, because he wasn't drawing defenses, that's how Winter Soldier came back in, got some healing, etc. And so I want to shout out George Carlin in the Unmatched servers, both the Restoration and the League one. But he made a comment that really resonated with me as well, is seeing Phantom play Winter Soldier today, like, actually made him like Winter Soldier, which for some people, especially the ones who don't like playing against that, long, grindy game type fighter that both Daredevil and Winter Soldier can be, like that's high praise, right? And I gotta agree that it was probably, I haven't seen a ton of Winter Soldier since he's still relatively new and doesn't show up all that often. And Turney still, he's a more niche pick, but yeah, I mean, it's probably the most entertaining Winter Soldier play I've ever seen. So if we see more of that and more unconventional stuff like you mentioned from Phantom in the finals, I think he's definitely going to give Zero a run for his money, and it will be an absolute blast to watch if I had to guess. But yeah, do you have any more general thoughts on either the Daredevil play, since it's one that you are quite fond of, or just the way that Zero was able to counter at Ash for those games?
Yeah, I mean, hats off to John. I would have considered both of those matchups to be Daredevil favored, and like I think you saw a lot of combat interactions go John's way in the first game, and a lot of them go Daredevil's way in the second game, and in both of those, John was able to come out on top. So definitely crazy. I think when you keep shuffling your deck, you're kind of adding so much variety into what you might be drawing, and even Jason pruned his deck well and added back in defenses and stuff, but it's still just never quite know what you're gonna get. So
Yep.
it's crazy to just see that, but definitely, I mean, well played by Jason, especially that second game. Fun to watch even when it goes a little bit south.
Yeah, that's always, again, it's always those close games that I find to be the most entertaining. You don't really want to see, the blowouts. Like, for example, a Sinbad Yanenga matchup, like that's probably gonna go one way. I always like the matchups that can swing back and forth, and especially if you can have like a crazy comeback, it's always fun to see. So it looks like we are getting close to being able to start player interviews here. So yeah, we're gonna get Jason in here first. All right, and hello, Jason. I gotta say, these were some crazy matches to watch. What are your like kind of thoughts just after playing some like kind of drag out, just absolute brawls there?
On Discord.
There we go. Hey.
Hey, hello.
Hey. My plan going into this was to force some coin flips into John, and I got some coin flips, but they didn't go my way. He played really well too. Like, they were great matchups, and it felt like either of us could have won them in several different vectors, and that was really great. I was fully engaged. I know that those games can sometimes be dry when it's a little bit cat and mouse, but there was a lot of things going on. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think that a matchup, especially the Daredevil Yen one, can get to a point where, especially once Daredevil hits that stabilization point where it gets kind of just going through the motions, Yen doesn't really have an out. And it almost felt like we were getting close to that in that Red game too, until Red started turning it around and going from winning basically none of the combat interactions to winning all of them.
Yep.
And that was super exciting to see. Obviously, if you had to choose, you'd want to eventually be on the winning side. But like you said, a very entertaining game from both the players' perspectives and I'd say from ours as well. So really, really glad that we got the back and forth for both of those, and it was just an absolute joy to watch. And just seeing the Daredevil matchups is something that I've had more of appreciation for over time, and I think that you piloted him very well. So hats off to you for the great play, and of course for getting here in the first place. So congrats on getting the top 4 once again, and putting on a heck of a show in the meantime.
Yeah. So how'd you guys react with his yen turn that when the third one, when he played the third one?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, that was where we were when that the third surprise volley went off without a block. We were like, uh-oh, this is not where Daredevil wants to be, because up until then, if that had been like pretty much anything else, even if it had been a shift there, it would have been great, but it still wouldn't have been as nasty as having all of the action gain attacks and then the shift on top of it.
I expected it to be bad, but not like
Not that bad.
this is
Yeah.
game defining. So
Yeah.
game defining. Yeah.
And but again, hats off to you. From that point, you blasted so long on that 3 HP and finding all those little things, and it came down near the end to that coin flip with hitting the feint or hitting the devil, and that healing was gonna seal it in. I think even the breather would have been in an all right spot, even though you'd prefer the 3, of course. So yeah, it was a wild ride for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, you got it.
Yeah, I would run that back. Like I, even though I lost both of those, and it felt like sand through my fingers. I would run that back again. That was both fun and felt like I was in it right until the last card reveal. So
yeah, and that's always what you love to see. I will pass it off to Mike, because I believe you have something for Jason here.
I just have a question. Hasn't anything to do with the gameplay you did today. For those who don't know, Jason and I were a little bit talking about drafting before this, because nobody knows really. Did you get the draft you wanted? That's the real question. Did you get the draft you wanted?
I feel like I won the draft. So like I was really excited. And it like I did some like different forks of like what could happen, and I would take that every time. So yeah, I was super excited about that. I get to play characters that I'm familiar with, and I get to put him. I just want to make John uncomfortable, and I think I made him uncomfortable. So mission succeeded there.
You sure did.
Perfect. Glad that it worked out that way for you at the beginning.
Yeah, and thanks for thanks for the discussions. Those were fun. Yep.
Yeah, I love doing that with you. I feel like we do that kind of as we get closer towards the end. We do that more and more, and it's something to look forward to on my part. I loved it, talking it out. It helps me too, so it's fantastic. It's always great.
Yeah, I wish that type of thing gets televised, because it was also such a back and forth cat and mouse where like we were both choosing based on like where we thought Medusa was going to be and knowing where his yen was going to be. So then I ended up with like 3 anti-yen choices, and he had to decide whether or not I was willing to self-ban my Medusa, and it was great.
Yeah, that's always such an interesting part of the process, the draft, which is something that can be definitely overlooked by some people, or I think people are aware that it's important, but maybe just not aware of how important it can be, especially at this high level where a tiny little thing in the draft can put you ahead from the get-go, especially when you're at this level with players on the same caliber. It's something that matters quite a lot. So seeing that interplay and the way that this format in particular handles that with the self bans and the pre bans and stuff, it's been really fun to kind of see how that's evolved and what people have kind of figured out to approach it with, because there's been several different styles that I've seen throughout the course of this event, and I don't think there's any like one dominant one, so you can really do a lot of interesting things with it for sure.
Yeah, my overall strategy was to let all of the strongest fighters like be available, and to see what he was willing to ban. Yeah, it was pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that be quite successful, and like you were saying, I think you ended up in a pretty good spot overall for the draft. And again, because they were so close and they could have gone either way, if a couple different things happen, and you're probably sitting on the other side of the 2-0. So yeah, really fun, and great to see that at least with the current iteration that the system's working as intended. it's been cool to see. I do have another question that has been bestowed upon me, the honor, of course, to pass this along from someone known far and wide within the Discord. And so the question I would like to ask you, Jason, is what happened?
In the first game, on like turn 5 or 6, I could have blind boosted a feint, and I chose not to because I thought a knee was going to happen, and it like everything went downhill from there.
Yeah, that was actually something that that I remember Chad pointing out at the time, like wondering if it was something that should have been done or not. But yeah, that it's again, see how the dominoes potentially fall down at different spots. So
I thought back to
awesome.
that turn throughout the entire match.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
Like,
that shows just how close they were, right? Where that one point of damage can end up making a big difference down the line. I've had similar things where a single decision, even if it seems small at the time, can definitely make a big impact later on. That's one of the reasons, for example, we didn't see him in this one, but Bigfoot, who's quite prevalent in these, like the ability and choosing when to draw, like drawing one too many times can spell doom, right? And so close games like that always are fascinating to analyze and figure out, you know, where different things might have led. But yeah, I think that about wraps this up. So is there anything you would like to plug on your end before I let you go?
First, I want to hear what Ashley and Chad like. Hey guys, what'd you guys think of that? I've let you down. Like Daredevil is like your bread and butter, and like I feel like you must have just been like, what is he doing?
Honestly, I think you played it really well in a lot of things. We just had different playstyles. I tend to be way more aggressive, but then the times where I saw you like be aggressive, the double through adversity turn to kill the archer, and I was like, Jason, draw cards, which is normally like not how I think. So it's just funny to see kind of that flip flop. But I mean, sometimes I think with that red game, like you can play it as perfectly as you can and still not go on the top. But it's fun to watch good Daredevil do that.
Yeah, I think that red game, you did literally everything I would do. Like I mean, I was like, the first one I thought for sure was a 4. I really did think it was a 4. The first eyes, I thought for sure was a 4. The time he did that second one, I'm like, this has to be it, right? But then it's also like, no, but what is, like you never know. So, I mean, it's literally the 50-50s. The Yanenga game, I have felt that Daredevil wins that one as long as he just sees enough defenses. And so you double vroomed the archer, and I'm like, okay, he's probably fine, right? Like, what's the worst that could happen? And the answer is Master Hunt, Action Gate, Action Gate, Action Gate, Shift. That's the worst that could happen. And then, yeah, I mean, you literally played it like perfectly from that point to even get to a spot where like the end game could go either way. Like I was trying to math out, I like the puzzle solutions. And I was trying to, and I didn't have a way for John to guarantee victory. I didn't. I felt like he had it, but I couldn't actually come up with an idea where that was true, especially with like maybe another like large 8-value devil coming in to clean up later. So all those scenarios, it was quite enjoyable. To go down to 4 health with like on like turn 3, and then literally like we're all like, is it gonna be a feint? Is it not? Like to have that be the end game from that game was just, it was stunning.
Yeah, definitely. I also wanted to point out something that I thought of when Chad was talking there was it was wild to me that during the game 2, at one point Daredevil ended up with more cards in deck than he started the game with. He went up to 19 at one point, and I actually pointed out that it was theoretically possible, not too far off from the situation you found yourself in, to get all 22 cards back in the deck if you really wanted to, even though you wouldn't probably in most situations. But the fact that it was even possible was just pretty crazy. So yeah.
Yep. I don't have anything to plug other than like thank you all for running the tournament. This is great to participate in. Everybody should play Tales to Amaze. It's going to be really rad. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for hosting this. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to participate.
Awesome, and thanks to you as well for everything you do, including the contributions and design for the Tales to Amaze, which is coming out, and it's probably the set that I've been most excited for, basically since I started playing Unmatched. So also cannot
Absolutely.
wait to get that in hand and see it. Being able to get a little preview of the physical stuff finally at Gen Con was a treat. So I can't wait to have the actual set in hand. So yeah, awesome. Congrats again, and hope to see you back next time, of course.
Yep. Look forward to it. Take care.
You too. Later. Jason has taken over John's body. It's fine. There we go. All right, and we've got Zero Skater or John. How you doing, man? Got to feel good after those crazy games.
Feeling pretty good. Honestly, though, I'm a little sick. I've been sick all weekend, and you can probably tell my voice is starting to go out. So, on one hand, I'm feeling kind of crappy, but on the other hand, I'm feeling great because, man, to get my run back, all that would make it better, of course, was if Taylor was in the grand finals waiting for me so I could get revenge against all three of my bracket demons in a row.
That is true. That
But
would have been wild.
but getting 2 out of 3, that's pretty amazing because both Bryden, who I played in the top 8, and then Jason, who I just played here, they were the 2 people that knocked me out of the very first Premier Unmatched tournament. So back then it was double elimination. So to get revenge on both of them back to back, feeling pretty great, honestly.
Yeah, it's awesome, and yeah, it just these games incredibly fun and tense to watch. Like particularly that game too. Like of course might be a little biased just because I love seeing Red and I love that she's come back in a big way and been much more viable in this format compared to Arsenal, at least in my opinion. And seeing that comeback in that second game after having such a rough start and losing all of the combat interactions except like one hand's going into a boxer, which was nice. And then just basically seeing, well, there's only kind of one way you win from here, and you need to win every combat interaction, and then you did.
Yeah.
and just clawed it back. It was a sight for sure. I'll let Chad take over because I'm sure he's got a lot to say here about these.
Yeah, well, John, I'm a big Daredevil guy. I think one of the reasons you're so comfortable playing against Daredevil is because I'm a big Daredevil guy. And so, first question is, how nervous were you? Because I know you're a big proponent of Yananga into both Daredevil and Winter Soldier, even though it looks like it can be a little rough. So where were you at after the draft? In a draft where I might consider being favored in Jason's position.
Yeah, great question. So I was very nervous, to be straight up. Like, that is not the kind of draft I wanted. Although I will say, and I know I talked to you a little bit about this beforehand, after the match against Bryden, I felt so bad. Like, even though I got the win 2-0, I felt like such a scumbag picking the fighters that I did, going with InGen and Wukong to just bully Bigfoot. And I just felt so bad. It's like fighters that are out of my comfort zone. It's not what I'm known for. It's not what I have fun playing. I just did it because I really wanted to get the win, and it worked out, but at what expense, right? So going into this one, I was kind of torn. I'm like, I really want the revenge against Jason. I want to get that win, but at what cost, right? Like, I also want to play fighters that I really enjoy and that I'm comfortable with and good with, and I want to put on a show for, the stream, for the viewers. So I was really torn between those two, and, I stuck to my guns, and I was like, all right, if he's going to leave Yen up, I don't care. I know he's prepped for it. I'm picking right into it, and we're just going to see what he can do about it. And he did end up, during the draft, he banned my Widow and my Genie pre-bans. Pre-banned both of them. And I was like, really, dude, you're going to do this to me? Oh, man, I was upset. But then I was like, well, if you're going to give me Yen, I'm going to take Yen and I'm going to run with it. And, whatever happens, happens. If you beat me with the Daredevil and Winter Soldier scumbags, that's fine. But I'm sticking to my guns and I'm going with Yen. So I was nervous for sure, but man, does it feel good to get the wins.
Yeah. Now, just another question. That Yananga game, you and I have played that matchup a number of times. And I think you probably have more wins than I do in the Daredevil side. But it's close. It's close. Yeah. But one of the things that I always learn is you just got to get as many cards as you can as Daredevil before you combo me. But the question is, when does that combo happen,
Mhm.
right? Am I able to draw all the cards before I draw the combo? So, long story short, you kept. What was that starting hand that you went ahead and kept with?
So I will say my hand, it wasn't that stellar, but the reason I kept was because I had the Master of the Hunt and I had a surprise volley, and then I had like a Jaws, a Stallion Charge, and a Divide and Conquer. So it really wasn't that amazing, but part of the reason was I really wanted that Jaws because he starts in a dual zone space. So, and he starts with a high hand count. So I wanted to first turn maneuver, single maneuver, hit him with the Jaws, and then just go from there and see what happens. Because later in the game, like, you don't want to defend with Jaws, and you want to attack with it so that you can get damage over, whatever he's playing. But it's likely only a 4 value on that map. It's never going to be a 3. He's not going to let that happen. So the best I'm going to get is a 5, and I saw that, and I just wanted to get that right off the bat. And maybe that's a stupid thing. Like, it's such a small little piece of the whole overall game plan, but, like, I saw that opportunity, and I figured I'd run with it, seeing as I also had, a good defense that does auto damage, a good archer attack that I can throw by sending them out, right? Because I know he's probably going to back off into the blue zone, which I can't reach without boosting unless, like, I send an archer out there, which is what I kind of prepped for. So all those little things kind of just added up, and I felt like it was a good enough hand to keep.
Yeah, awesome. And then finally, one last question. In that little red game, right? Mike had full confidence in you the whole time. You should totally watch the replay and hear him speaking your glories. But I remember one time you played. I think it was the pelt path, the walk into the woods.
Into the woods.
3 you attacked with like hands. He took that one hands, and then you attacked with hands again. And then basically he double maneuvered away, and he was at 4 cards now. He took one of the attacks, defended the other, and this was when you went sub 1 minute. This is the term where you waited to take down. I was just curious what was going on in your mind, and did you have the warp scheme? Did you have the path, and were you considering at any point going in and applying the pressure there, or were you just trying to figure out what's my game plan from this point?
Yeah, briefly I considered warping with path, but then I was like, no, I think that's a losing play because I don't have any real damage output. Huntsman was gone, I think, or soon to be.
Right.
So yeah, I thought that game was long gone. I was during that game thinking about what map I was going to choose against Winter Soldier for the Red Winter Soldier game. I was kind of checked out for a minute there, and all of a sudden, I think I got a good capitalization the turn that Huntsman died, and me and Jason talked about this, but my option was to defend with a blank stones and keep Huntsman alive because I had an axe in hand, so I could immediately swing the counterattack there and hope to get maybe 2 or 3 damage or so. But the problem was then Huntsman stays alive, right, for another attack from Daredevil to get a free cycle off. And I really didn't want that, and so what I decided to do was let him die. I immediately did the knives into the woods and threw the stones on offense, the stones that I would have wasted defensively, expecting him to faint, which he did, but then I got to hands and picked the stones right back up. And stones is obviously a good card. It's a threat depending on what it hits. It's RNG, but, it's a pretty good card. So I think that was a good call right there. And then from that point, I was looking at everything and I'm like, okay, it's not looking good. He's at full health. He's got a lot of deck count, but he's going to have to do a lot of double maneuvers. So the deck counts probably will even up. And I still have like all of my auto damage left. I had both mouths, both Never Leave the Paths, both Once Upon a Times, and both eyes. So I was like, I still have enough auto damage to win this. I can't give up just yet. As long as I play it out, there's still a chance of me winning, even though it's looking slim. Right, you got to play to your outs. And I've played this matchup a few times before, and it always, I feel like, from the red side, feels like you're losing until suddenly you're not. Because if things go your way, you have more than enough damage to close it, and it's damage that Daredevil can't do much about. And every time he attacks into you, you're also threatening their auto damage on defense, just like you are when you attack him. So puts him in some awkward spots. I got lucky with the combat interactions. The things went my way from then on. Once the 2 eyes hit back to back, I think then all of a sudden it tilted from unwinnable to, okay, wait a minute, I have a chance, and it was teetering on the edge, and I got lucky and I made the right call in the end, and it worked out. But what a game. Both of them were terrifying.
Yeah, the spot that you started turning around there was really the back-to-back eyes into knee, like absolutely crazy. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the whole time a feint was in hand that was known as well, because it had been breathered back. And so, you know, going for those calls, it's those mind games, right? It's like sometimes Red's going to try to get those fours, and I think on at least one of those, if not both of those, I would have been expecting that from the Daredevil side. But I love going for it as Red, because even though you know he has the feint, he knows that you know he has the feint. And so, and he also knows you have the knee, so it really does, like, it's how many layers down do you go?
Right.
And you just have to make the call and
see what happens.
There's justifications for both sides, right? And so, getting both of those back to back was just, I think, absolutely required to get you back in there. And then from that point, like, you started to actually have favorable interactions. Even at the end there, if your the second mouth had been feinted, I still think you could have put Daredevil in a really awkward spot going into your turn, like by threatening double attacks with, you know, what order do you do the Once Upon a Time and basket, or even the ears at that point. Though you would need to basket if you did that first into Once Upon a Time. So, and being at 3 is like a nightmare scenario there for Daredevil. So yeah, it's so awesome to watch, just as someone who has loved Red from the get-go.
Hope I made you proud.
Yeah, honestly, like, I don't know if I could have played that as well as you did there. Like, I'm pretty comfortable into the Daredevil matchup as Red, but I don't think I would have been after that early to mid-game position. So being able to kind of, you know, get to a point where you were already preparing for the next game, but then realizing when the tide turned and being able to turn it back on and really hunker down and find those win cons, like that's you know, big deal when playing this level. So I don't even think you would have been in a terrible spot going into game 3, but but being able to turn it around there right at game 2, not only was it great to watch, but obviously means that you don't have to wonder about if you can win that game 3.
Yep. We talked about that. Neither of us had played that matchup going into it, so we were just winging it, the Red versus Winter Soldier. I've heard some talk about it, but neither of us have played it, so that would have been very interesting. But yeah, game 2 was pretty soul-crushing, but there was a moment where I told myself, all right, stop thinking about game 3. This one's not over yet. Play it out and see what happens. So that's what you got to do, right? Just play your outs, and you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. I think that's the first time that I've seen Daredevil cycle back to more cards in his deck than he started the game with. Like, that was crazy. Brutal. But still ended up being so close at the end in exhaustion, just because you're getting the hands passes. You had him double maneuvering most turns. You were boosting and attacking a lot, so you weren't drawing as far into the deck. You also didn't use many of the wolf skin. I think you only had one that ended up drawing, so that does make a big difference too. And you end up having, like, not too much of a difference in passes when you factor in the extra attacks as well as the paths, of course. So yeah, really, really awesome.
Thanks.
But yeah, if anyone has anything else to add before we kind of wrap up here.
I need to actually semi-apologize to Jason, and maybe, John, you can actually congratulate your whole win to me, because the Red game wouldn't have had the turnaround if I didn't do the announcer's jinx and have to ask, has Red won any interaction so far? Because as soon as I asked that, it immediately changed. I mean, like a coin flip. Like, it was, I asked the question and I got the answer immediately, which is, yeah, she's going to win everything from here on out, so don't worry about it. So, you're welcome, first of all.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the commentator curse.
Yeah, and you know what? I have 2 great dice in this matchup tomorrow, which is you, my friend, having a chance to win, and then the guy who beat me having a chance to win it, because maybe I could have been in his shoes, you know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
right.
Maybe I could be where he's at.
You were
so
one
it's gonna be great
interaction
to
off.
watch. I was one interaction off. It was, you know, I say I'm not upset about it, but one of those play to your outs. I would have never thought that if I actually don't try to steal a card, as T-Rex into Luke, and I go into this random purple zone and randomly attack him. So play to your outs, like you say it best. And you that's why you're in the spot you are, is you know how to. You would have seen it. I wouldn't have, and that's why you're there, and that's why I'm here, and we're okay with it because we're going to see some great gameplay tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. That's what I'm hoping for.
Awesome. Well, congrats once again. You're one best of 5 away from that 3rd trophy. I'm very excited to see you and Phantom face off. I don't know if you guys have before in tourney, at least.
In pools only. Best of
In
2
pools only. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, that is going to be quite something. We'll definitely be looking forward to that, and that does also mean that I will be hosting again tomorrow. So I am looking forward to that as well, because
Save
I do
my
enjoy
voice.
commentating. Yes, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. Is there anything that you want to kind of shout out that you want people to check out before we get going? I'm sure
This
a lot of people are familiar, but
sweet
just
merch,
in case.
you know.
Hey, yes, get the official Zero Skater branded tank tops and be, maybe you can also win 3 trophies in the Unmatched.
This is how you
tournaments.
do it. This is
Just
magical
buy
powers.
it gives the power, exactly.
Magical
You can
powers
channel
there.
the spirit of Zero Skater himself.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the match tomorrow with Phantom. It's going to be a blast. I have not prepped at all for best of 5, so we're just going to wing it and see how that goes. I'm just happy to, I got my run backs against Bryden and Jason. Making it to the finals is just always a blast. It's so much fun to be a part of this whole thing. So thank all you guys, for sitting here on commentary. I know it was a long match. It was probably a lot of dead time to fill, but I'm sure you guys did a great job and hope you had fun with it. But thank you for doing that. And it's just such a blast. And you know what? I'm more than anything just happy that I got to play Yananga finally. He let me have Yananga, and I showed everybody why she is still the big one.
Exactly. They can't ban all your mains if you just keep adding more to the roster.
That's right. Jason sure tried. He got a lot of them.
Yeah,
but
he was sniping them left and right, but he got your fave through, and that's awesome, because it's always great to win, of course, with the characters you like best too.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, really cool to see.
Yeah, feels good, man.
Awesome. Well, I will let you get going so you can relax and maybe get a little bit of prep thinking how you're going to approach tomorrow. But yeah, really looking forward to it, and best of luck, of course.
Yep. Thank you so much, guys.
Later. All right. And that is mostly going to wrap us up here. Zero will be moving on to face Phantom tomorrow. The grand finals will start around 9 a.m. Central, which is 10 a.m. Eastern, and that's around 2 p.m. UTC. So we'll be going live around that time with the intros and deck highlights and all that once we got the draft in, and we'll have a new crew tomorrow. But before we sign off here, I'm going to thank the 3 awesome people I had commentating with me today. Starting with Mike, thanks, and where can people find you outside of this?
Well, once in a while, or I should say, I used to have a podcast called The Defenders Resolves First. We've talked about it for a while, about trying to bring it back, and it's still not a great time for both my co-host Tommy Elliott and I. But if you want to rewatch that, otherwise, I'm always hanging around the Discord. Love talking to people, love seeing people. So hopefully, I'll catch you around there.
Awesome. And Chad, what about you?
Yeah, well, thanks again, y'all. These were fun games to commentate. Crazy games. And I always love Daredevil. And you can find me on YouTube. My username is Unmatchad, or Unmatched with an A instead of an E. I still don't quite know how to pronounce it, and I like keeping it that way.
Awesome. And any final words from you, Ash? We're gonna see perhaps a team league encore from the Unmatched couple, perhaps.
Love that, man. So baby boy number 2 is due sometime in December, so we're trying to figure out, like, do one of us main and one of us sub, and we see if we can try to fit it in. But man, team league was a blast. Always be a Chadette.
Yes, and in fact, we had all Chadettes here on the commentary desk for this one, so always a great time.
It's
And
a
so
little
yeah,
bit of
for
an exclusive
anyone,
cult.
yes, we'll slowly absorb the rest of the server over time. Don't worry. We already have at least 256 Chadettes, so we're always adding more. But yeah, so for anyone who enjoyed Team League or didn't get a chance to try it last time, we are looking to hopefully bring that back at some point between the end of this event and the next one. So keep an eye out on the Discord server if you're interested. It was a lot of fun last time, so would love to see people enjoy it again. But yeah, I think that's about going to do us for today. So thanks again to everyone who tuned in and watched. Hope it was just as entertaining for you as it was for me, because this was an awesome set between these players. Thanks, of course, to Restoration, who not only makes this amazing game, but also sponsors these events with prizes and whatnot, and is also just super active in their Discord server, answering questions, giving updates on new sets and whatnot, interacting with community in a way that I haven't seen from many other game developers. It's just awesome to see how much they support and care about the community and making sure it's thriving as much as possible. They make the assets available for all the online tournaments, both in Vorpal and Tabletop Simulator, and it's above and beyond what I would normally expect. So huge shout out to all of them, because they are absolutely awesome. And if you ever get a chance to go to any of the cons and meet them in person, see some of the events run there, then that's a great time as well. I was able to have the pleasure to go to Gen Con this year, and definitely plan to try and make events like that in future, because it was an absolute blast. Of course, thanks to Alan behind the scenes, 645 Development. He is the one who makes all of this tech wizardry work amazingly, and we definitely couldn't do without him. And of course, thanks to all of the TOs, who I am now proudly a member of the group who put this all together and make it possible. Of course, not only a shout out to Frank for being one of the TOs, but the awesome work that he does for League. If you're interested in getting involved with any of the competitive events, whether it be stuff like this, the big tournaments that we do twice a year, or the monthly ladder play, or even some stuff for Unmatched Adventures that we're looking to add some leaderboard or something once that is out and in people's hands. So there's it's going to be more of like a ladder thing, where it's a casual thing, not super competitive. Of course, it's using the co-op mode, so it's more going to be like a challenge type thing that we can rotate through different setups and characters and minions and stuff. But yeah, Tales to Amaze will be sending out shortly to people who backed it, and then I think retail for US is slated to release in November, with maybe a couple months after that for international, though I don't have as fine of a detail on that at the moment. But again, Restoration keeps updates pretty frequent on the server, so always pop in there to see kind of where stuff is. But that set is super exciting. It's, like I said before, one of the things that I've been most excited for since I started playing the game, just because outside of Unmatched, I love doing co-op stuff. So I'm seeing that type of system brought to my favorite game, as well as one that I was able to personally play test over the course of its development, is super awesome. So definitely check that out. In fact, Jason was one of the initial designers for it and worked with Restoration to make it a thing, along with Darren, Cardboard Hustle. So yeah, for now, I think we will be wrapping up here, and we will be back bright and early tomorrow morning for the grand finals between Zeroskatr and Phantom. So until then, hope everyone has a good rest of their night, and we will see you soon with more Unmatched awesomeness. See you next time.